This is a broadcast from the Pop Cult Pod. Welcome back to the Pop Cult Pod. I am your cult leader, Tom Pod, as it says right here on the video version of the podcast. Second time we're doing a video podcast. Hopefully, going forward, that'll be the case. We dropped our first one there a couple weeks ago. People seem to like it, so that's awesome. But whatever way you're listening to Pop Cult Pod, welcome back. Not much else to cover. We're just going to dive straight into the news because there's a lot to cover. Basically, everything is being rebooted. Everything is reboot. I'm going to be rebooted eventually, replaced by someone younger and sexier, and I'm just not ready for that yet, which sucks. But apparently it's going to happen because they've seemingly rebooted everything else, and soon I'll be the last thing left, and I'll probably bomb. But hey, let's talk about it a bit more in the new news.
Not just news, not just new news, but the new.
First thing we need to talk about that's being rebooted is Ren and Stimpy. You idiot, Stimpy. Yeah, so this is being rebooted, which is a bit of a weird one for a couple of reasons. First of all, I shouldn't laugh. This is a show that's been so tainted. It's actually a really good documentary just came out on this. I just watched it the other day called Happy Happy Joy Joy, the story of Ren and Stimpy. Really good documentary if you want to check it out. That kind of tells the history of Ren and Stimpy, why it was so influential, why it was such a big deal, and now why that legacy is quickly coming apart and why it's damaged. And that's why I think the timing of this is so tone deaf, because where do I even get started with the disaster that is this? Okay, so we don't have a lot of information about this, first of all. It's being rebooted, it's being brought to Comedy Central. Comedy Central is really trying to bring up its adult animation block. Comedy Central in general seems to be in trouble ratings-wise, so this is probably a reason for that. They're definitely diving in on nostalgia. They're bringing back Beavis and Butthead. I think there's a Darius spin-off that's also headed there. But basically, they're doubling down on adult animation and reboots. Ren and Stimpy is a weird one for a couple of reasons, because it came out especially during the Me Too movement that the creator, John Kricfalusi, I think a lot of people just call him John K because he's got an unpronounceable name. I'm not going to even be sorry about fucking your name up because he's a piece of shit, basically. He's, uses influence against people, slightly psychotic, seemingly. He, had a lot of underage girls, pictures of underage girls, relationship with underage animators. Really just a horrible person. And this is why it's so odd to me that they decided in the wake of all this, that's really fresh in people's memories, to be like, we're bringing Ren and Stimpy back. It's like, whoa, okay, read the room, guys. Like, literally, that documentary I was talking about dropped like this week, and the week before that they were like, Ren and Stimpy's coming back. It's like, oof. Now, to be fair, they've been very clear. Original creative team is not involved. The creator is not involved. John K is not involved. Okay. The only thing is, and they're saying very clearly, he's not going to make any money out of this. And I don't know if that's actually possible. So, like, the vague history of Ren and Stimpy is that it was kind of a show that was groundbreaking to a lot of people. It really helped inform a lot of kind of adult animation. Even though it was a kid's show, it was very much surreal and odd. It was a show that was, a lot of ways people kind of said, like, not really focused on writers and animators. It was the animators being the writers. They kind of drove the ship there, or drove the clown car, as it were. But it was never really a great match for traditional means. Like, even when they were making the show, the first season kind of went fine. Second season, episodes were late. They were constantly fighting against censors. It was a disaster. I mean, the creator was fired from his own show after like the second season, and it ran for like 5 seasons. It was just a mess, and seemingly that was like something that still they couldn't solve. Like, even I think it was 10 years ago, they tried to bring Ren and Stimpy back again, and this time it was like no holds barred. You can make your own show. It's adult. This time it was like adult. What do you call it? Adult Cartoon Party, I think it was called. They brought the original creator back. They were like, you can make this whatever way you want, no censors. Don't even gear it towards kids. You know, we're going to assume that the people who watch this as kids are now adults, and they'll watch this. And they didn't. It was a disaster. The episodes were late once again. Never really delivered. Fans didn't really like it. It was a disaster. So it's really odd to bring this back for so many reasons. There's so much baggage that comes with this show. And I wonder, is there still, like, are Ren and Stimpy fans even there to support it anymore? Which is just really quite odd. I don't fully understand the reason behind it. I'm sure we'll get a few more details, but I don't know why. It's a very odd decision by Comedy Central to bring this back. Beavis and Butthead I can kind of see as making sense, but Ren and Stimpy is being rebooted, and it's not the only one. Basically everything is in the news story is almost a story about a reboot. And how will I break the news of the next one? Okay. Our next story is all about how they're taking a sitcom and turning it upside down. And I'd like to take a minute. You just sit right there. I'll tell you how they're doing a dark, gritty reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm so glad I didn't fuck that up and have to refilm the whole thing. I wonder how long I could have kept that up. I should have written just the whole rap. The whole episode should have been rapping. Oh my god, that would have been amazing. But I'm not that talented. Right. Bel-Air. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is being rebooted. Now, this is an interesting story, and I found it more interesting, to be honest, because of the public perception of it. For a while, there's actually been a lot of talk that the Fresh Prince of Reboot, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was being rebooted. And we didn't get a lot of information. It was kind of just out there. It was rumored. I think like Will Smith would be asking, he'd be like, hey, you know, we're working on something. Now, what's happened here, okay, is that about maybe 2 years ago, a person made a fan film. A guy called Morgan Cooper, I believe his name was. Morgan Cooper. He made a fan film of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which he just called Bel-Air. The art behind me, if you're watching the video, is from that fan film. So he made a fan film that was basically a more dramatic, darker, I guess, more realistic retelling of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And it went viral. It was a big hit. It got a lot of people. It caught the eye of Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith and their production company. And going from there, it seems now like this is going to be a series, and like apparently it's like a really hot commodity. So they've got this idea for a series, and I would say, what if I'll come to the reaction to this in a minute, because I found it very, very interesting. It's going to be, of course, more realistic, more grounded. I would say watch the fan film if you want an idea for what they're going for. It's quite an enjoyable little trailer. It's only a couple of minutes long, but it shows you what they're going for. It's sparked a total bidding war here. Every streaming service seemingly ever wants a go at this. Netflix, HBO Max, Peacock, Apple and Amazon have all shown interest in the series. There's talk of them kind of giving multiple season commitments to this. So it's really like a big deal. It seems like regardless of how it does, it's going to be around for a while if it does get picked up. Morgan Cooper, as I said, made the fan film. He will still be involved as a co-executive producer, and he's going to direct a few episodes. Chris Collins is going to be doing the showrunning duties on this, who worked on Man in the High Castle and The Wire. Described Bel-Air is a 1-hour dramatic retelling of the beloved 90s sitcom, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that leans on the original premise of Will's complicated journey from the streets of West Philadelphia to the gated mansions of Bel-Air, with a reimagined vision. Bel-Air will dive deeper into the inherent conflicts, emotions and biases of what it means to be a black man in America today, while still delivering the swagger and fun nods to the original show. So this is why I found the reaction to this very interesting, and this is why it's important not just to read the headline of a story. So I think the general reaction that a lot of people have about reboots in general, actually, and it's, you know, not without reason. We've got a lot of shitty reboots of everything. When we see the headline, they're doing a dark, gritty reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, everyone's like, oh, for fuck's sake, why? What are they doing? But generally speaking, when people kind of looked into the story a little bit more, and I've seen a lot of people that were like, I was against this, and then I saw the trailer for it, and I was kind of in the same boot. I was in the boot. Same boat is what I'm trying to say. What does it mean to be in the boot with someone? I was in the same boot. Probably some... I think this is the second time in as many episodes where I've just fucked up a saying, and then I'm like, but what would my saying mean? As if that would make it mean something. As if that would bail me out. So, like, a lot of people have kind of seen the trailer and said, oh, you know, actually this kind of works. I don't know how it works as far as how many times can you sort of reinvent the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to make a point about kind of current climate and politics and stuff? But at least in the trailer, and again, it's tough when you're watching a trailer and saying, okay, this is going to be a whole series. That can be a problem. It looks pretty decent, and I think it's a strong concept. And I think re-examining, a sitcom from that perspective to make a comment on modern day America and politics and the kind of the problems that a black man faces in modern America, that's really, really interesting. I don't know if there's enough there to sustain a whole series. But I don't know. I think if they don't stick too dogmatically to the original, it could work. Which is, generally speaking, kind of a little bit odd when it comes to reboots. So I guess they're kind of trying something new. But even with all that said, I mean, it kind of feels like why even make this the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or Bel-Air, I guess. It's just a little bit odd, really. The only kind of comparable situation I can think of is when they rebooted Sabrina. Like they were like, it's not your mom and dad, Sabrina. It's like dark and gritty, but that was a pretty good series, if we're honest. So it could work. It's a little bit odder that they've gone this direction, but seemingly there's a lot of interest in this, certainly from networks, and I could certainly see people in general having interest in it. So there we go. It's not the only thing Will Smith's rebooting. We also got very little information on this, but that Plane, Trains and Automobiles is going to be rebooted with Will Smith and Kevin Hart. Okay, fine. There's a lot of like just kind of brief asides we got on reboots. There's a Who's the Boss reboot apparently coming. I mean, that doesn't really mean anything here in Ireland. I think that was maybe before my time anyway. I think that they also released a trailer for like Saved by the Bell as a reboot, which again, okay. I was never a massive Saved by the Bell fan. Clueless the series, not the movie, is getting a reboot for Peacock. Again, I don't remember. Most people kind of don't even realize it was a Clueless series, so fine. Three Men and a Baby is being rebooted with Zac Efron for Disney Plus. See, man, I meant it. Like, everything is being rebooted. Everything is reboot. Reboot everything. Just do it. Fuck it. We have enough original ideas. Let's let's go back to the old ones and reboot them over and over again. The saddest one that a lot of people have had, and this is a really weird story because we didn't get like any information on this. I think this was like a one-line mention in another article, is that apparently they're about to reboot The Exorcist for next year. Nothing official, nothing confirmed. I mean, who knows what a reboot means in this context? Are they going to try to go the Halloween round and bring like Linda Blair back? Are they going to just do another Exorcist film, and not just, and you know, like they do what, The Exorcism of Emily Rose could just be another exorcism story? I don't know, but it's kind of funny because like the crowd who are in charge of this reboot, like they dug up a tweet from them like 5 years ago, and they were like, just FYI, we're not going to ever reboot The Exorcist. And now it's like, oh, what? That was just clout chasing, wasn't it? You just tweeted that, so everyone would be like, yeah. Imagine if everyone did that. They're like, hey, just so you know, the Universal Studios here, we're not going to reboot Jaws. And everyone's like, yeah, woo, good on you, Universal. What an easy way to get good karma from the public. We're not going to reboot this. And then they do it anyway. But, you know, MacGruber, this isn't a reboot. It was a movie, a Saturday Night Live movie, featuring Will Forte. That was a kind of piss-take MacGyver. Really funny movie that never really took off. It's kind of got a cult following since. Peacock are making a TV series of it, 8 episodes, probably next year, realistically, if we're honest. I do want to talk about another reboot, and this is, I guess it's a reboot. I'm trying to think, can you even call it a reboot? It's an animated TV show becoming a live-action TV show. Probably one of the most popular animated shows going at the moment. And when I say going, I mean it's over, but everyone's talking about it because it's now on Netflix, which is Avatar, The Last Airbender. So, a while ago, I think maybe even 2 years ago, there was talk that Netflix were going to make a live-action reboot of Avatar, The Last Airbender. Now, this summer, Avatar has been kind of a breakout hit on Netflix, certainly in America, because they've got the rights to it and people have binged through it. It's been a massive success. And on the other hand, the live-action one has been relatively quiet for a while, until this week, where we got news that it had lost the original creators of the show. So these guys were basically heavily involved with the live action Netflix reboot, and they've both left. Now, I'll get into some of the rumors. I'll get into what they've said, and it's kind of interesting because, like, let's be honest, it's never a great look when you lose the creators of a show due to creative differences. Like, imagine if, like, Stan Lee was just like, yeah, I'm not involved with any of these Marvel movies anymore because, like, ooh, like, you would immediately think, oh my god, they're going to shit all over the original or shit all over their creation. And that's a reasonable idea because, I mean, it kind of feels that way when they lose their creators. But we have a lot of statements here. So, show was created by Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian, I'm going to fuck up this name, Brian Konietzko. So, here's what Michael said. Many of you have been asking me for updates about the Avatar live action Netflix series. I can finally tell you that I am no longer involved with the project. In June of this year, after 2 years of development work, Brian Konietzko and I made the difficult decision to leave the production. And he went on to say Netflix's live action adaptation of Avatar has the potential to be good. It might turn out to be a show many of you will end up enjoying. But what I can be certain about is that whatever version ends up on screen, it will not be what Brian and I had envisioned or intended to make. That was a pretty political answer of, look, it could be good, we're not involved. It doesn't line up with everything. It was kind of a nice way of saying, like, hey, this isn't line up with what we want and we made the show. So, the harsher words came from the other co-creator, Konietzko, in his statement on Instagram. He wrote that while Netflix had publicly promised to support the creator's vision of the live-action series, there was no follow-through on that pledge. As a result, Konietzko alleged the creative environment had become negative and unsupportive. To be clear, this was not a simple matter of us not getting our way. This is what he said. Mike and I are collaborative people. We did not need all the ideas to come from us. As long as we felt those ideas were in line with the spirit and integrity of Avatar, we would have happily embraced them. However, we ultimately came to the belief that we would not be able to meaningfully guide the direction of the series. Ooh, so that's a bit harsher. Basically, it's like, this isn't just us being difficult. It seems like this is not a good environment to work in, for one, which is pretty serious to say now, especially in modern times. And also that basically, yeah, this is not going to be true to the original. Okay. Netflix have been very quiet. They've only put out a very short statement that said, we have complete respect and admiration for Michael and Brian and the story that they created in the Avatar animated series. Although they have chosen to depart the live action project, we are confident in the creative team and their adaptation. Right. That's like a bit of an odd one. What I found odd is it took Netflix also a while to respond to this. Almost as if it took them by surprise, or they couldn't even come to agreement on a joint statement. It's not. I said it a minute ago, I'll say it again. It's not a very good look when creators of a property are like, we can't see eye to eye creatively. Now look, just to be clear, you don't necessarily need the creator involved for a good version of something. Obviously not. The amount of things that I've rebooted and actually have been good when the creators have long passed on, that's fine if it's presumably in the spirit of it. I've just been recently talking about, you know, the Child's Play remake. Didn't have the creator involved, but I thought it was very good. So there is the possibility that can work. There is rumours out there, okay? And take this with too much salt. Take so much salt with this that if your mother saw you doing it, she'd slap you around the ear and say, that's not good for you. Sorry about your mother slapping you, but, you know, it's not easy. You shouldn't put that much salt in your food. It's bad for you. But, you know, this one time, I'm allowing it. A lot of salt. Some people have suggested that the reason, or one of the reasons, is that Netflix might be whitewashing the show. Which could very well be a possibility. I mean, it would be like kind of a career suicide to be like, hey, like when you look at the cast of Avatar, they were very much like minorities. They're very much drawn from kind of oceanic cultures and Asian cultures. And at the same point, like, you can't really name any of those actors, and I don't think that's a bad thing because I mean you're going to be dealing with child actors anyway, but they might want some big names for this series, which would be a big mistake, because with this property that's as big as this, and it's proven to be a big deal, animated on your service already, like, the name is what will draw them in. The benefit of rebooting something is that, assuming it's a property that has a lot of fans and a lot of interest, you don't necessarily need a big name attached. In fact, you would have got a lot more goodwill having the creator's name attached than any actor, in my opinion. There has been a lot of kind of talk on Twitter, people saying it could be a whitewashing thing. We don't know. I would like to think that Netflix are smarter than that. But who knows? I mean, it kind of caused a lot of controversy online. A lot of people have been saying, hashtag save the Last Airbender adaptation and all this. We don't really know. I'm surprised it's been as quiet as it has, to be honest, for 2 years. I can't believe this was 2 years ago that this was announced. But regardless, not looking great for the Avatar Last Airbender reboot. More news on that as it comes. I can't believe, though, that that's such a, to be honest, they could have just been like, can we cut these guys like a check to be involved as executive producers? Like, that would be easy money, save you the PR. But regardless, not a good time to try turn your TV show into a live action TV show, especially because you were just like, you made the show very, very popular again, and now you're like, hey, we're gonna fuck up our own version if that's cool. Another thing, another reboot. Oh my god, I actually thought for a second I was out of reboots. I don't know how I fucked this up. TV show turning into movie. Knight Rider. let me give this a go. Knight Rider. A shadowy flight into a dangerous world of a man who does not exist. That's like the intro of Knight Rider. Like, that's the only thing I know. I know the theme, I know the car, I know Hasselhoff was involved. And I know that as I just did the intro kind of stops there, and then it goes like Michael Knight, was it a cautious loner? They call him a loner straight up. It's like, oh, Hasselhoff, a loner. That's why he needs a talking car, because he's got no fucking friends. Okay, Knight Rider. What do you remember about Knight Rider? The car. That's kind of it, right? Well, apparently that's enough to make a movie about, because James Wan, of course, director of Aquaman and the Saw movies, is producing a Knight Rider reboot. Why? They're doing this really weird thing lately where they're like, let's reboot old TV shows into movies, and it has so very rarely worked. Last year I went on a tear about Charlie's Angels and was like, why this is a really bad idea. It's not going to do well. Now, I actually saw the movie. I thought the movie was fine. A lot of people said it was a lot worse than I said. It also didn't do very well at the box office. And I think it comes down to this. If you have a TV show that was big back in the day, that isn't very big now, and has failed on TV subsequently, don't try to turn it into a movie. Because if people aren't going to give it a chance on television, they're definitely not going to spend their money to go see it on the big screen. It's so rare this works. I mean, one example I think that worked, at least from a good movie perspective, was the A-Team, but even that kind of underperformed. That's why there was no sequel. I thought that was a really fun movie, but regardless, Knight Rider. It has a script being written by... This is not a real writer, man. This is like a studio. It's like, let's write this movie, and they're like, well, I'll just make up a name, because it's being written by TJ Fixman. TJ Fixman at your service. Boo-boo. What you need done, boys. He's a video game writer. He's apparently worked on most of the Ratchet and Clanks. Mr. Fixman. We need a new Ratchet and Clank, Fixman. Get your ass in here. Hey, everybody. He comes in and finger pistols the room every time he enters the room. TJ Fixman wears shorts to board meetings, He has a beer for breakfast. TJ Fixman. This guy is apparently now going to movies, and he's going to reboot Knight Rider. And all we know aside from that is that it will be set in the present day and follow the anti-establishment themes of the series. That's just like such corporate nonsense. They're just basically like, they might as well have just said, we're going to update it and retain the spirit of the original. Update it, modern day, original, anti-establishment themes. Let's be honest. Why are they bringing this back? Fast and Furious. That must be it. That's the only reason I can be like, that they were like, what do we have with cars? Knight Rider. Oh, that's a property. That's easier than just making a car movie. Yeah, we'll do that. I don't get it. I like Knight Rider was like, so they had Knight Rider the original. They had TV movies of Knight Rider that did okay. They had a TV series called Team Knight Rider that didn't do very well. In 2008, certainly about a decade ago or thereabouts, they had a TV movie that was meant to be an introduction to a series where Will Arnett was the voice of Kit. Then they had to get rid of Will Arnett because he was the voice of another car company. So they turned that TV movie, which got shit reviews, into a TV series with Val Kilmer now as the voice. That got shit reviews and was cancelled after like 17 episodes. What, like, it seems so odd to me. Like, how many times do you have to learn this lesson? If you can't get it to work on TV, I don't think you can get it to work in a movie. I like the people that love Knight Rider. Are they really like so enamored and waiting for a big budget Knight Rider movie? And the like, I don't know. It's just so odd to me. I don't get this line of thinking. I never have. I never will. There's another property that I've never understood. I've never understood why they keep trying. And that is Tron. We're talking about reboots. This is the one time you can call it a reboot and it would work perfectly. Like, if you want to call this anything, you want me to get any bit of interest in this movie, call it Tron Rebooted. I would love that. That would show that they've at least got a degree of self-awareness and it's a little bit clever. But no, they're calling it Tron Ares apparently, because let's just get into this. Tron. I've never understood the appeal of Tron. And I remember, like, when the sequel came out, everyone was like, yeah, remember Tron? And I'm like, no, and neither do you. Like, I've never found any one person that was passionate about Tron. Because it was something that, like, at the time, I'm sure people were like, wow, computers are magic. That's so cool looking. Look at those effects. Have you ever tried watching the original Tron? I dare you. If you have Disney Plus, go watch Tron. It's dreadful. It's a really awful movie. In my opinion, it just looks really like it's also that thing, like, you know, when they try like guess what the future technology is going to look like, and they're just so disastrously off, like it's almost unwatchable. Like they're just wearing these really awkward suits. It's bad. Now, Tron Legacy. Okay, when that came out, everyone was like, "Yeah, Tron is awesome. It's so cool. Look at that. Ooh!" But I also know very few people who actually bothered to go see it because what the hell is Tron? It's like an obscure movie that your dad didn't even watch. It's first of all, here's a story. Here's an insight. Okay, this is completely true. The reason why they looked into rebooting Tron the first time around was that one of the executives at Disney, his daughter was at college, and she said, "Oh, me and a couple of my college friends were watching Tron." They were like, "Oh, it's so awesome!" Ha. And they were like, "Hey, what are we doing with Tron? Can we reboot Tron? What about Tron?" That is genuinely why they made another Tron movie. And the thing is, even when that Tron came out, everyone thought it might be a big hit. Because it was everywhere, everyone was talking about it, and it looked expensive, and it flopped. It didn't do well. It did okay. It did bad enough where they tried to make a TV series of it for kids, and even the kids and adults had no interest in it, so it was cancelled as well. They never made a sequel to it because it doesn't. It's not something that's going to succeed. How many times do I have to say this? Like what is the cultural legacy of Tron? Of Tron Legacy, the Daft Punk soundtrack, right? And when this was announced, it's so weird because I think this is just the internet, and this is exactly what happened with Tron Legacy. The internet was like, "Oh, it's going to be awesome. This is going to be a smash hit." No, because the people who like Tron and the people who are on the internet is like probably a lot of overlap, whereas the people who like Tron, have heard of Tron, or know what Tron is, compared to the general public, is like zero. I spat all over my neck making that noise. You can probably see that on video. Wow, slow it down. Blech. It's like, I don't get it. Why do they keep trying to make Tron happen and it's never going to happen? I don't understand the appeal of this. And then they were like, they're rebooting this, okay? The idea is that they have Gareth Davis is attached to it. He directed Lion with Nicole Kidman and Dev Patel, I believe it was. Apparently a very good film. Haven't seen it, but he's involved. The only detail we have aside from that is that Jared Leto is going to return. Now, why the fuck, if you're rebooting a series, would you bring back Jared Leto? Even the people I saw excited for another Tron were like, Tron, yes! Oh my god, they're bringing back Jared Leto. Like, just, why are you even bothering giving us like this weird continuity? Just do Tron. Just take that basic concept and start all over again. If you want. Or get rid of Jared Leto. He's not a name that's going to draw people in. I mean, it's just such a baffling decision. He apparently also revealed, I was going to say ruined, the title of the movie is called Tron Ares. I don't know, that's not a marketable title either. Tron Ares. I don't understand why they keep going to this well. I don't understand what they think is going to happen. It just feels like they have expectations for this franchise that aren't believable, or aren't achievable either. And that's not the only sci-fi franchise that has that problem, in my opinion, because we also got a lot of news in the last few weeks about Star Trek. The Star Trek film series. Where do we start with Star Trek? Of course, at the moment, it's kind of tearing up TV. And when I say that, I mean it's on TV. Some people love it, some people hate it. But it's certainly doing pretty well. We have Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Discovery. There we go. It took me a while to remember that one. They just started an animated show called Star Trek Lower Decks. It's a big property for Viacom CBS or Paramount, whoever you want to call it. The movies have been incredibly weird. They've been a very strange experiment because they keep trying to make Star Trek this big budget sci-fi blockbuster series, and it never was that, really. Even the movies that did good, it's kind of an anomaly, and that was with the kind of original cast, whereas these reboots have kind of alienated some of the hardcore fans, and regular people just don't really care as much about them. I think most Star Trek fans are kind of the opinion that they're not Star Trek. Now, I'm even calling me a casual Star Trek fan will be kind, but they keep investing hundreds of millions of dollars into these movies, and they're never going to do that well. J.J. Abrams had some brief success with these because he basically turned them into Star Wars. And then eventually he made Star Wars. Go figure. And that was the big complaint, and that's why they were successful, because they were kind of an action version of Star Trek. And I actually like those movies, to be honest, but I'm not a hardcore Star Trek fan. And again, a Star Trek movie having a couple of $100 million behind it is just not a great investment. And we saw that when Star Trek Beyond came out and didn't do very well. And because of that, they're scrambling with what to do, because they want it to be a big budget blockbuster franchise. But I don't think it can ever be that. They have 3 Star Trek films in various stages of development at the moment. So Star Trek Beyond bombed back in 2016. We're now nearly 5 years on. I think it could be a case where that the kind of ship has sailed with that version of the new cast, the Kelvin Timeline cast. Originally, it was said that S.J. Clarkson was going to direct Star Trek 4 with that cast. Now, that was put on the back burner seemingly some time ago. I think we talked about it a long, long time ago. She went on to direct, I think it was a pilot for the Game of Thrones spin-off or whatever it was. Prequel series, there we go. That kind of went nowhere. That was the only version of this seemingly with the original cast. So that's not happening. Okay, so that's one down. We had 3 Star Trek films. So what do we got? One down. The one that had seemingly a lot of promise was one from Noah Hawley, who gave us Fargo and gave us Legion, and he's written a lot of books. He's a pretty acclaimed guy. Great talent to have involved in this. His movie is now also seemingly been put on the back burner. There's a new head of Paramount, I believe it is, or Viacom CBS, whatever you call it, called Emma Watts, I think her name is. Yeah, Emma Watts is the new president of Paramount. So she's been kind of looking over the slate, being like, what do we do here? What do we do with Star Trek? Because they want Star Trek to be this massive franchise, as I keep saying. And it's never going to work. I'll just say that into the mic very gently. Noah Hawley's version is now seemingly on the back burner. And there's a couple of reasons involved in this. First of all, that was not going to involve the current cast, for lack of a better term. it was seemingly going to be new people. Whether or not that means they're going to, recast, whether this was going to be a different timeline or just during the same time, who knows? We don't know. But what we do seemingly know, and one of the reasons for this being, kind of put on the back burner, how many times have I said back burner now? Is that the plot apparently involves a virus killing off large parts of the universe. Yeah, that's not great. That's kind of a problem. And I understand that. I don't know if you can rewrite that somehow. But anyway, I guess they have no interest in it, so that's not happening. The one most people are interested in, certainly the questions I've been asked most were if the rare time a Star Trek comes up, someone's like, hey, Tarantino's making a Star Trek movie. Yeah, he was talking about it, but again, Tarantino loves to talk. He also said he's probably not involved in it, but even though he kind of put forward that idea, it felt like he wasn't going to necessarily be involved, but the idea apparently is still around. It's being written by the guy who wrote The Revenant. Now, here, recently, we got what his film would have involved. First of all, remember, his film is going to be R-rated, because it is, it's a Star Trek film, but it's a Tarantino Star Trek film, R-rated. And what's incredibly weird about this is that it seems like Tarantino was like, I want to make a Star Trek film, but I don't want to make it like Star Trek. Tarantino just wants to make a gangster film, apparently. He wanted to make a film where it was set in a 1930s gangster kind of universe, where the crew go to 1930s gangster planet. And look, before I get angry messages, yes, this is inspired by a episode of the original series, season 2 episode of the original Star Trek series called A Piece of the Action, where the crew go to a planet, and on this planet, a space crew years and years, and I mean probably hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, left behind a book called like Chicago Mobsters of the 20s or something, and because of that, that kind of informed the whole society, and it became a gangster planet, which is a really cool idea, right? And it really is a really acclaimed episode. It's like one of the most famous Star Trek episodes. The thing is, one of the reasons people like that episode so much is that it's kind of pretty removed from regular Star Trek. It works in the concept of a TV show because you're like, oh, they're always in space, break up this monotony. Oh, a gangster episode. This is so something new, something so different. And then it's like they're turning that into a movie. I don't know if he was going to use the current cast, but regardless, it seems very ill-informed to build your film franchise on what it isn't. Like, if you're going to make a Star Trek film, it seems very odd that you would turn it into a gangster film, because maybe you could do that with a part of the film, but like, Star Trek isn't known for it. Like, if this film is a success, if you're like, I really like that, this is really good, I can't wait for the next Star Trek film, and then you're like, okay, well now we're in outer space, it's in the future, nothing to do with gangsters. That's not a great idea, is it? So it's very odd. I mean, it was weird anyway to make an R-rated Star Trek film. Star Trek doesn't do well when it has the chance of everyone going to see it. When it's R-rated, it seems even less likely that it's going to succeed. I guess they were hoping that the kind of name value of Tarantino would help them out there. Seemingly, that's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Star Trek in general just seems to be in trouble right now, and for at least the next while, it's a franchise that seems destined to stay on TV. Going from one sci-fi series to another, Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel 2, of course, is in development because the first one was a massive success. We had heard that Ryan Bowden and Anna Fleck had not returning to direct the next one. And we finally found out who is going to step up into directing chair. And that is Nia DaCosta, who is the current co-writer and director of the Candyman reboot, which is apparently very, very good. Certainly got a lot of good buzz. She's also directed the film Little Woods, which I've heard is fantastic. Again, I have not seen it. But she is going to direct Captain Marvel 2, making her the first woman of colour to direct a Marvel film. So that's great to hear. July 8th, 2022 is when Captain Marvel 2 comes out. No other details on that. I don't know, I can't remember. I get the feeling I've heard of who's writing Captain Marvel 2, but I couldn't find it for the life of me when I looked earlier. But she's not writing it, which is odd. She's generally written or had some hand in the writing process of a lot of these films. Maybe that's what they're kind of hoping, that they can hire her as a director and then basically say, hey, you've got a few notes in the script, right? But anyway, yeah, that's a great get. Nia DaCosta is certainly a kind of big rising star at the moment. There's a lot of hype for that Candyman film, and I think that's a very good get for Marvel. So we'll see how that goes. Again, it's currently set for 2022. It's hard to imagine it kind of holding that date. We don't really know where the Marvel slate is going. You know, a lot of Disney releases and the MCU in general has kind of been held up by this. If Black Widow makes its date, maybe it can hold on to that date. But if Black Widow does make its date, everything is kind of going to jump down a slot, presumably. Seemingly as well, there was a lot of basic confirmation that Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier series in Disney is also going to be delayed. Whether that means something else is going to be delayed, moved around, we don't know. WandaVision originally was coming after it. If they tie in a certain way, that might not be possible any longer, so we don't know. But one Disney property that we do know where it's going, and we do know is going to end up in Disney Plus, is Mulan, because we got massive news officially that Mulan is going to Disney Plus. This is something we heard about and rumoured and discussed a long while now, because of course it was so close to being released, and you know, Disney haven't had a big release in a long time. They pulled it from the schedule. It was a question of whether they were going to kind of go the Tenet route and try to risk a theatrical release, but no. And this is kind of interesting for a few reasons. So they're putting this on Disney Plus, but they're putting it on Disney Plus, and you have to pay to rent the film. You have to pay $30 to rent this film. Or to get this film, not rent it, I should say. It's weird, like the framing of this is all over the place. People are saying, oh, it's a rental. And they're like, oh, it's a purchase. It's kind of not either of them. It's like, you have it forever, but you only have it once you have Disney Plus. So you're spending $30 to get the film, but you also have to, you know, pay $7 or whatever for Disney Plus. So, yeah, that's a pretty big ask. Now, let's discuss this. Let's weigh the positives and the negatives. I've seen a lot of people say, no chance I'm going to pay this. Pretty fair. Like, if you can just imagine, like let's look at my situation. If I was going to see this myself, someone was like $30, I'm like, no way, not a chance am I paying $30 for Mulan. But if I was going with my family and they're like, hey, $30, 5 or 6 people, hell yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Are people willing to pay the $30 for Mulan? I've seen a lot of people say no. But I'm guessing, maybe this is wrong of me, I'm guessing a lot of the people that comment on the internet for movie websites and for entertainment news are probably guys by themselves. I don't think they're necessarily family men. Because I guess family men have better things to do than just troll the internet and comment and stuff. Maybe that's a wrong assumption, but I do think I have seen a few people say, like, for I'm in a family, absolutely I'll watch it. Now, the thing is this though, that's the most expensive kind of rental we've had throughout all this, and that's good for a few reasons, because obviously they want to say, hey, this is a step above, this is a big film, this is a big budget film, this isn't like, you know, whatever small film got thrown to streaming before. This is a major release. This is like, can you believe you're getting this in your house? Now, the problem with that is that, of course, that comes with a more expensive price. And then we come to a few other debates about this film. Is this going to be how things are going to progress from now on? Cinemas obviously are not happy with this, but generally speaking, aside from that video in France where a guy beat the shit out of a Mulan standee, they've been pretty quiet. Because this is the mouse. You don't mess with the mouse. Do you know how much money they brought in last year for cinemas? I mean, yeah, they're not going to say bad things here about Mulan. But the question is, if this succeeds, where do we go from here? Like, a lot of people said, oh, it's a once-off. And Disney have said as much, basically, that this is a one-off. No chance it's a one-off. This is a lot of prep has gone into making this kind of interface and this work to make this work to begin with. You know, what did I say? Make this work. They put a lot of like kind of employee work behind making this kind of rental scheme work. These kind of prime rentals or whatever they're calling them through Disney Plus. I don't think for a second you put that amount of work in unless you are considering at least this as an alternative going forward. What do I mean by that? If this succeeds, is there a chance other big budget films from Disney could go straight to Disney Plus? Everyone's questioning Black Widow. I don't know if Black Widow is going to be there, but I mean, at the same point, if a certain percentage of people are willing to pay this, why would you not do that? You're going to make 100% of the money as opposed to 50% or whatever they share with studios. I don't necessarily think they will, because when we come to the other question, which is the price, are people going to pay this? And especially at such a high price, considering once this film is out there, it is out there for everyone. The piracy level for this could skyrocket. And I mean, when the price is so high, you're probably sort of unintentionally driving people towards piracy. And this is not like a Trolls World Tour or a Scoob where you might buy this for your kid and they might watch it over and over again. This is more expensive, and B, this is a bit more dark compared to your usual Disney stuff. This is not like Mulan Princess. This is Mulan with a sword, big budget kind of action movie. I don't know is the same rewatchability there, and that's going to factor in too. This film is not as kid friendly as some of the other properties that have dropped throughout this pandemic. And that leaves us with the question of, is this going to succeed? I don't know. It needs a lot to succeed. I think this is kind of this is a canary in a coal mine. This is like, can this model work for us going forward? Mulan was probably going to do pretty well, but it was never going to work with this instability, especially in places like China. And because of that, it's probably a worthy sort of sacrifice. That being said, I don't see how well it can do. But if it does do well, it's going to change everything. I just don't think it will because of the price. If you're watching the video, it looks like I've got a long flowing make because my head is lining up perfectly with the actress who plays Mulan. Oh, so much hair. I'm going to miss this lack of hair. Not that I have much hair to spare anyway. Well, anyway, that's our news. The Mulan is one of the bigger stories. It's going to be interesting to see how it actually progresses. I don't think it's going to change the world, mainly because I think there's a good chance that people just aren't going to buy it, to be honest, especially at that price, and considering you have to get Disney Plus as well. But I think it's worthwhile risk for Disney. I think if there's any kind of company who can afford to take a risk, it's probably Disney. A lot of the movie studios are hurting right now. So are they, of course. They're losing. They've lost money for the first time in like 20 years or something. And I mean, if your back is against the wall anyway, you might as well risk something like this, because if it succeeds, there's a lot more money coming your way. Anyway, speaking of movies coming, why not we look at the trailers? Why not we look at the trailers? Was that Yoda speaking? Why not we look at the trailers?
This is the theme for trailer.
This is the theme for trailer. This is the theme for trailer trash. Get in the bin.
Get in the bin.
Few things to talk about in trailer trash. First thing I want to talk about is the trailer we got from Netflix, which was The Devil All the Time. I put on this bit of a southern accent because that's how everyone talks in this film. We're talking about the devil and preacher and sins and oh my lordy. Everyone goes around in this trailer talking like Foghorn Leghorn. Even Tom Holland, little Englander, Tom Holland, he's going around with his big southern accent. And he's like, preacher, do you think you can ever forgive me? And everyone's like, I don't know, son. Oh boy. I know I'm taking the piss out of this movie, but it actually looks pretty damn good. It's weird because it's a trailer that didn't give a lot away. The reason I'm going on and on about the accents is because that was kind of like the big thing. It was just like accents, kind of creepy imagery. You can see it behind me. It's all about church and fighting in the good old South and putting up crosses and good lord, son. Not a lot to go on, really. It is based on a book by, what's his name? Donald Ray Pollock, which was quite a well-received book. I'm I'm not sure how much I should say because the trailer doesn't give much away, but basically it follows like a load of these characters in post-World War II southern Idaho and West Virginia, including like a war veteran. I will only say what's in the trailer. There's a preacher involved, a kind of a couple. It's kind of a southern gothic kind of vibe we're getting off it. It doesn't give away a lot, which is why it's a good trailer, but it definitely gets you talking. The cast is just fantastic, but as you can see, it's going to be quite a violent kind of horror focused, kind of mixing religion and this kind of creepy southern imagery. Kind of reminds you a little bit of like a, I don't know, a True Detective maybe. That would be probably one kind of thing I can think of that's like, I mean, it's a lot like a lot of these kind of, you know, it's like a genre unto itself, really, these kind of southern gothic kind of films. So yeah, Tom Holland is our lead. We have Bill Skarsgård, best known for playing Pennywise, I believe. Riley Keough, Jason Clarke, Sebastian Stan, Mia Wazowski, Robert Pattinson is playing Reverend. It looks really, really good. There's not a lot to go on in this trailer, as I said, but it does look really good. That's kind of as much as I can say. And I'm actually relieved because like normally when we get a trailer for like a movie that's come to cinemas, we get a trailer like months and months out, and it feels like they give so much away because they need to get people into the cinemas. But the good thing about Netflix is they don't need to get you to go anywhere. You have it in your house, and because of that, they can just kind of put out trailers with a month to go that don't have a lot of information, and that's kind of the blessing it is, because this certainly piqued my interest, piqued a lot of people's interest, and it's coming very, very soon. It's actually out next month, 16th of September, I believe. Directed by Anthony Campos, who gave us Christine, was probably one of his more notable things. That was the one about Rebecca Hall playing the journalist who did she kill herself on TV maybe? I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to go on in this trailer. It's a gorgeous trailer though. It looks well shot. It looks creepy without kind of being too cliche maybe, but it certainly it does feel kind of familiar as far as the genre it's going for, but nothing wrong with that at all. The other trailer we got, going to talk about this one. This one just came out today. I have another thing I do want to talk about after this, but I wouldn't really call it a trailer. I want to talk about Death on the Nile. This came out, of course, a sequel. You can hear it behind me there. Turn this down a bit. This is, of course, the sequel to Kenneth Branagh's Murder on the Orient Express, starring Hercule Poirot. Yeah, that's right. The trailers this week are heavy on accents. We had all the people and the devil all the time, and now we have the people on Death on the Nile. With Hercule Poirot, I believe there has been a murder. Well, I find this interesting for a couple of reasons. For one, Murder on the Orient Express was quite an interesting film. It kind of blended sort of some new sensibilities with a real old school kind of mystery. Of course, it's based on an Agatha Christie novel. This one kind of feels the same way, and I'm surprised because I watched Murder on the Orient Express and thought it was quite good. Didn't really hold much, weight, or didn't stick around in my memory for too long, but I did enjoy it. And when I watched this, I was like, yeah, you know what? I want to watch the last one again, and I want to watch this one. It looks pretty good. They do a great job again of blending the kind of old kind of murder mystery style with some new visual flourishes and that kind of thing. The cast in this is decent, but I think that it kind of suffers because the cast of the last movie was so impressive. This one, again, it's of course Kenneth Branagh is returning to direct. It's apparently coming out in October, which maybe. I don't entirely know about that, but sure, it's coming out in October. Let's just assume that is the case. The other thing I found interesting is, and this is actually news that came out during the week, it's not coming out from 20th Century Fox. Disney have changed the name of 20th Century Fox to just 20th Century Studios, so we get a look at that logo there at the start of this trailer. Who's in the film aside from that? I'm looking at a cast list. It's a really odd cast because they basically go through the cast alphabetically, whereas at times you're like, that, I don't know who that is, and then you're like, that's a big name, and it's like halfway down the cast list. So we have Annette Bening is in the film. Of course, Kenneth Branagh is Hercule Poirot again. Russell Brand is in it. Did not even recognize him at first. We have Ali Fazal, whose name I recognize, and I don't know why. Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders, Armie Hammer, Rose Leslie, Ygritte from Game of Thrones, Letitia Wright, best known as Shuri in Black Panther. Gal Gadot is probably one of the bigger names attached, and we actually get to hear Gal Gadot with an American accent, which is surreal. It's actually surprising because a lot of time when I kind of see Gal Gadot, at times it feels like she's just playing herself. I think there was like talk at one stage when they made Wonder Woman, they just made everyone in Themyscira have Gal Gadot accent, so she didn't have to put in an impression. But she sounds very good in this. Certainly in the snippets we got here, it sounds very natural. Someone on YouTube pointed out that she sounds like Scarlett Johansson, and now I can't unhear that. But it looks interesting. It's one of those, again, like, it's hard to kind of promote a murder mystery movie because it's like, what do you show? You show all the suspects. What else do you need to tell us? We already know a murder is taking place, so it looks good. I like the visual flourishes that this has and the last one had. I think they made the right choice, kind of giving this one such a different setting from kind of a snowy train to like, you know, a heated kind of river adventure. That would make things feel at least a bit fresh. Hopefully it's as good as the last one, or certainly as enjoyable as the last one, because I do like the idea of just having a recurring kind of mystery series, and we have that in. Was that racist? That should be a feature on this podcast. Is that racist? I'll mock up a theme for that next week. The other thing I want to talk about, and this is a very, very short thing. And of course, remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, the video features are all playing behind me. We got a look at the jersey from Space Jam 2, or was it Space Jam: A New Legacy? And yeah, I don't know what to make of it. Music's kind of playing low. It sounds like porn. It's kind of weird. It's like a very bright blue jersey with kind of the big orange Looney Tunes kind of iris that they all burst out of. But then it's also pretty bland looking. Like, I don't know. It feels like something that they kind of over designed. It's very, very colorful, you know. If we get another look at it there, it's like just such a. It's kind of ugly. It's actually the same color as like the Miami Heat's like blue jersey. It says Toon Squad on very plainly. That's kind of it. So I don't know what to make of it. Some people are really kind of freaking out over it, thinking it's great, thinking it's whatever. It's fine as a jersey. I mean, like, let's be honest, the jersey is like the least important thing for this film to succeed, which is why I actually wanted to talk about it, because there's rumors about Space Jam 2. And at the time, no one picked up on these rumors, really. They kind of stuck to, like, the dingy corners of the internet. You know, I found these news sources on the dark web. No, like, it just wasn't picked up by major places. And it was probably because it was a leak. And I guess they didn't want to publish, like, leaked material, because that can be a big no-no in Hollywood trades. But I'll say it anyway. And this has actually been around, I think, like, the initial leak might have been December of last year, so it's been around quite a while. But here's the rumor, okay? Apparently, at the wrap party for Space Jam 2, someone snapped a picture, and in that picture, they got a photo of a few different characters. But the one that's most legible was they got a photo of the Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz. And they also got a photo of the Joker. And they also got a photo of the Mask. Now you're thinking, well, this is Space Jam 2, because apparently the rumor going around is that Space Jam sequel isn't going to just involve the Looney Tunes kind of coming together to fight. The Looney Tunes are probably going to be, you know, the good guys, the Toon Squad. The bad guys apparently aren't going to be like aliens from the last film. They're going to be made up of some of the villains from Warner Brothers' vault. Heard a rumor as well, Voldemort could be there. Of course, they own the Harry Potter license. Joker, obviously, they own DC, so you could probably get a few DC characters in there if you wanted. Jim Carrey, I believe they own the rights to the Mask. I've heard a rumor, again, heavy dose of salt. Enough salt that your mother would slap you again. Slap you in the other ear this time. Jim Carrey apparently comes back as the Mask. There was a rumor that Jared Leto might be back as the Joker, or what was it, Joaquin Phoenix, actually. Some people say Joaquin Phoenix is back as Joker. I don't know if that was the case. Regardless, it seems like there is going to be some of the classic Warner Brothers villains in Space Jam 2. Even if it's just a cameo, which like that's what a weird. I think it's genius because like Space Jam 2, it was like, like didn't we say all we needed to say with the first Space Jam? Like, yeah, we get like cartoon characters playing basketball. Yeah, I get it. But I find that interesting. Kind of lazy. I mean, it doesn't mean the film's going to be any better, but it'll certainly be weirder, more intriguing. Very odd though. So that's the only reason Space Jam 2 is kind of on my radar so much. Haven't heard much about it aside from that. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. Tommy Potter and the Podcast of Gripes. I've tried to do these in 2 film bunches. There was a bit of a gap between the last few episodes, so because of that, I've actually seen the film after this as well, but I'm going to keep that there. But I might make reference to it at some point. So, where we left this, we had Philosopher's Stone, or the Sorcerer's Stone, and Chamber of Secrets down. And we move on to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, couple of things about this. As I said before, everyone was kind of points to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban as being like, this is the one where Harry Potter got dark. And I was kind of like, hey, Chamber of Secrets had like a sword through the head of a snake. I mean, it was kind of dark anyway. And I was always kind of dark and miserable, but I kind of get what people are saying. I think a better way of putting it is that it kind of feels like stylistically this is where the kind of shift happens. Like, not even just the story. I think, Chamber of Secrets is quite a dark story anyway. It's like all about racism, really. This is the one where, like, stylistically, some of the darker elements come in that will set up and inform the later entries. This is a film also, the first film that was not directed by Christopher Columbus. They brought in Alfonso Cuarón, which I still look at and I'm like, that is insane. Alfonso Cuarón, who made Children of Men, who went on to do Roma, went and directed this, which is kind of mental. I'm really surprised when it just seems such an odd choice that he said yes to it. But I think it was probably one of those cases where he was like a smaller director still, and they got a hold of him. But he does a great job. I feel like he really actually manages to bring kind of a directorial kind of flourish to this film. There is actually, like with Christopher Columbus's films, there's definitely a style. It's very kind of sanitized, kind of a very happy vibe. In fact, I will actually say when I get on to the later films from after these Goblet of Fire, I feel like we have a very sterilized director going forward. It's the same director for all of them, David Yates, but we'll talk about that when we get to them. Alfonso Cuarón definitely kind of brings a bit of, directorial style and that kind of thing to the film. This is, I'm not sure about this film. A lot of people kind of think this is like one of the best ones. I know it's a lot of people's favorite book in this series, and the film, people love it. I like it in some ways, but to me, it really very much feels like this film has to do some of the heavy lifting for what comes next. It introduces a lot of things that inform the rest of the series, with like the idea of kind of Death Eaters and stuff, right? And setting up a lot of these kind of things. But as a film itself, I'm kind of like, doesn't feel like an awful lot happens. Which maybe that's just me. I don't know. First of all, I mean, like the Chamber of Secrets is way too long. I feel like this is kind of the right length, at least. We start off with the Dursleys. I called the Dursleys the Dudleys in my last episode. I had wrestling on the mind, Dudleys, get the table, but no. Vernon Dursley, again, the MVP. I love that guy. I honestly wish every single Harry Potter film gave us some Dursleys. I'd be okay with just watching everything. I just love that family. I just love how shitty they are. I love just Vernon Dursley in particular, the dad. I would just watch a whole film of him. He's just has an amazing performance. He's just so like petty and angry and hilarious. His sister, I believe, it's his sister Marge, comes into this film, and of course Harry Potter accidentally inflates her. So he becomes a balloon and just kind of floats into the sky. He does this without a wand again. Still not clear what the rules are about that. How you can use a wand and not use a wand. I mean, I guess the wand makes your magic more powerful. But also, it's like, I mean, if you just do it without a wand, why not have a wand anyway? Or I don't know. He does that, and again, it's one of these things where like the rules of Harry Potter are only applicable in the moment. Where it's like, Harry Potter, he used magic outside of Hogwarts, and then they're just like, oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. We don't need to worry about that. It's only the magic. Whereas in the fifth one, which I just saw like last night, they were like, he used magic outside of Hogwarts, and I thought that would be like a big thing, like government conspiracy thing, and it really kind of isn't. But we'll get back to that when we talk about it next. We have the night bus, which is a very memorable element. Very odd though. It's like, I found it so strange. It's just like one of these nebulous ideas thing when like you try to pick apart the rules and you're like, huh? Like it comes to a wizard in need. Like, what do you define as in need there? And also it's like people can't see the bus, I think. So how's that work? But it's entertaining. I mean, look, it's a kids film. The only reason the only reason I'm happy to pick these apart compared to other kids films is that like there's so many people out there that are like, when you say Harry Potter's for kids, they're like, what? Harry Potter is so depth, and it's not at all. It really isn't. It's the night bus. I mean, what do you want? It's a bit of fun. Aside from that, I mean, I kind of feel like so little happens in it. I'm actually going to look up the film because it's like, it really feels like to me that there's not a lot happens in this movie. It's obviously all about Azkaban, the Prizoner of Azkaban, which of course Sirius Black, played by Gary Oldman. He is, spoiler, I guess if you somehow haven't seen this, he is of course Harry's godfather and was a great friend of his. Why is this not coming up? He was a friend of his father, his family, etc. And those links are kind of explored again later on. So we have also our new kind of defense against the dark arts teacher, Remus Lupin, I believe his name is. I think that's his name, Professor Lupin, Remus Lupin. I really like that character, actually. It's a really good performance. David Thewlis plays him, I believe is your man's name. I'm trying to think. I've seen him in a few things. I think he's in Atonement as well. David Thewlis, yeah, Remus Lupin. He's good in that role. I really like that character. He's kind of, what I like actually is like we kind of have a lot of teachers in Harry Potter and they're just so over the top. Whereas Lupin, I actually feel like I watching him like he'd be a good teacher. He's actually doing a decent job, and he's not just teaching these horrible lessons that at times just feel like scaring for the sake of like a big moment. He actually feels like he's doing a good job as a teacher, which is a shame because he's gone at the end of this movie. They have the revolving door of defense against the dark arts teachers, as always here. What else do we have? We have the hippogriff, which is Buckbeak. Malfoy just acting as shit. He's like, oh, I could do that, and he just fucking walks up to the thing like, oh yeah, like in the worst possible way, and then he's like, oh, what, Hagrid, I'll tell my father about this. How could you not? It's like, dude, what did you expect to happen? Like, what else do we have? I mean, do I need to say that Remus? Oh wait, I should talk about Michael Gambon. Actually, this is his first appearance as Dumbledore. And when I said in the last episode, I said that I think I preferred Feck, what's your man's name? The other guy. I preferred the other Dumbledore. But I actually, I do think I prefer the other actor as Dumbledore. This is so annoying because he was like, I want to be remembered. I remember that was literally what I said the last time. He was like, he wants to be remembered for something other than Harry Potter. And I can't even remember him. Richard Harris, there we go. Whereas I feel like he might be better. I do think Michael Gambon is a lot better than I remember in these films. He does have a kind of authority to him, and he can actually he doesn't have the same kind of anger and sternness that the other that Richard Harris had as Dumbledore. And I kind of feel like you need that because at the Headmaster I feel like he's a little bit too suave as Dumbledore compared to Harris, but I do think he does a good job, more than I remembered at least. What else do we have? I was going to say Remus Lupin is a werewolf. Spoiler. Everyone in this film is like an animal or something, which is just whatever. Like, one thing that really bugged me. It's such a shame because like for a film that has so many great creature designs and like animal designs, the werewolf design is so bland. Like, it's not good. It's just barely memorable. It's just like a weird scrawny ass werewolf. It feels like they were under the hammer there to get it done time wise or something, because it's just not good. They could have done a lot better with that in that regard. But you know, yeah, like again, I just don't feel like this one is a great one. It involves a lot of like, this is who this person is, and he betrayed your family, Harry, and he worked for Voldemort, and this guy, oh, did you know he's actually not a bad guy? He works like. So the end of the film, we have Scabbers, which is Peter Pettigrew, Ron's rat. He's just been like Ron's rat for 12 years. That's mental. Like 12 years, that guy was just a rat. What a weird thing to do. And I just find that so weird. And was he just chose randomly to be the rat of the Weasleys? What was his life like as a rat? He just got adopted by the Weasleys, I guess, and eventually did he see Harry Potter when he was the rat and he was like, oh shit? Or was he like, yes, Harry Potter? Rafe Spall plays him, or Spall, whatever, which is grand. That's as much as I can say. Sirius Black turns into a dog. That's kind of a thing. And of course, there was a kind of recurring imagery of the Grim, which is reading it in the tea leaves. We have Trelawney is in the film as well as that character I just don't like. She just feels too far removed from the rest of the teachers. She is one of those characters where I'm like, no one would hire her as a teacher. The ending of the film I kind of find weird as well. Like it's like a running joke. Everyone just keeps running to the film and being like, oh, Expelliarmus, get rid of that wand. Someone else runs it, Expelliarmus, to get rid of the wand. Expelliarmus. It goes on and on. It's like a running joke. And then, this is something I found odd. Okay? And it really made me be like, I think I hate Harry Potter. He's a bit of a dick. Snape. Snape is a good dude, man. Snape runs in. Okay? Shields the kids. And is like, let's get out of here. He's willing to die for the kids he's always given shit for, right? And he just blasts him with a wand. Worse than anyone gets it in any of the films. Most people just get blasted with a wand and they're just back up 10 seconds later. He gets blasted through a bed and he's just like, we don't see him for ages again. Ugh, it's like, I feel bad for Snape. And I know you're going to feel worse for Snape later on. I remember how these films go. But it's also just like, come on, man. And they're shitty to him again later on. Like Snape tried to save your ass. And you're just like, hey, boo, I want to hear what he has to say. Bang. Ugh. We have the Time Turner. I hate the Time Turner. It's there's a lot of things in Harry Potter it feels like they introduce and like then they just like, oh, don't bring that up ever again because it's just a game breaking element. And there's none more significant than the Time Turner. Like, first of all, I have so many questions. They gave Hermione a Time Turner. McGonagall gives her a Time Turner so she can make lessons. First of all, how badly planned are these lessons that like they're like, oh, you're gonna miss this and this. Number one. Number two, you were like, hey, we can give her a magic time traveling thing so she can get to her lessons. That seems like a lot of responsibility to put on a 14-year-old. Here's something that can, alter time. Make sure you get to your class in time. It's just nonsense. And then it's like don't get me wrong, I like the kind of Back to the Future Part 2 elements of this. It's kind of cool, it's interesting, right? And it's a bit of fun. But again, it does feel like that thing again where they're like, there's not a lot going on this. Basically there's not much going on in the movie. And then we get the last act and then they're like, repeat the last act in a different way. Because there's nothing else to do in this film. Again, like the Time Turner, that would have been handy, like a million different times, wouldn't it? I don't know. This film is fine. I thought it was. I preferred it in my memory than I do kind of on a rewatch now. I know a lot of people, again, this is like their favorite, and I do think it does a good job. I think it's pretty well directed. I think it does a good job kind of moving the series towards a kind of a darker element. I think it kind of informs things a little bit going forward, but yeah, I just don't find it that great. Like if someone was if and I don't know if you really would do this, but if someone was like, hey, do you want to just watch one of the Harry Potters, like this would be probably middle of the pack at best for me. Which brings me to Goblet of Fire, which I actually love. I think might be my favourite one so far. It's easy to like this film because it's like there's kind of a lot of big moments. Like the film is basically like structured in a way that it's like this is where we have one big action scene, then we have another big action scene here, because of the Triwizard Cup or whatever. Again, I can't stop it looking at the logistics of this, where it's just like we're going to have a competition for wizards, and we're going to take in 2 whole schools or whatever. You're like, oh, how does that work? Like, there's just a load of like. Do they have the same team? Like, that seems like a big undertaking. You're just like, we're taking in 2 classes of people that speak a different language. Although, I mean, I guess magic, they can probably like, it's probably a language spell, right? And then it's like, we're taking them in. Do we have a room for them? We have classrooms. They have the same teachers. I mean, look, I guess this is more a poor reflection on me that I'm like, what are the logistics? Like, I'm the person that J.K. Rowling would be sending tweets to, the ones that, like, no one cares to know or ask. I'm the guy that's like, but what are the logistics of the Triwizard Cup? Like, where do the kids go? Do they share dorms? And she's like, oh, wizards shot on the floor. It's kind of, like, interesting. And it's also, like, thing, again, where I have some questions. I know, I'm very boring. All I ever have is questions. We have the Quidditch World Cup. Ireland wins the Quidditch World Cup. Well, hey, come on, the lads. They use a port key to get there. How does a port key work? Like, if that was the case, why would you just not use port keys for everything? You're just like, hey, this object can get me wherever. Touch it, and it launches you wherever. Why would you not do that? Why does anyone ever use a car ever? Make your car keys a port key. Boom, I'm in Hogwarts. Brilliant. Again, I find the transport message is so inconsistent. They're like, they have the flu system is what the fire thing is called, apparently. And they have like the port keys, and I'm just like, why not just use those instead of getting on a train or using your broom and all this shit? It feels like they every film they're like, they try to bring in a new form of transport. They're like, oh, we have a flying car, we have a flu system, we have port keys. It's like, what else do we have? The big the dark arts teacher here is Mad Eye Moody, played by Brendan Gleeson. Dude, I fucking love this character. But the worst thing about it is, like, spoiler again, I guess, it's not the real Mad Eye Moody, and I don't know at what point he changes. I didn't actually look it up. The thing is, he's drinking Polyjuice Potion, which was introduced in the second one, which is nice. They actually do use the Polyjuice Potion like a few times in this. This is like one of the few things they actually introduced where they're like, maybe we actually could use that a couple of times. He's like always seen drinking, but I've like from what I've read, he does that because he's afraid someone's going to poison him. Because this guy used to be like an Auror, or something. He used to basically like kick the shit out of. Yeah, he was an Auror. He used to fight dark wizards, which is such a badass thing, and I like that. And because he has such a cool kind of story of fighting bad guys, he would be crazy. And because of that, I found it believable that it could have been the real Mad Eye Moody the whole time, or the fake Mad Eye Moody, but like, I don't know what point he became the fake Mad Eye Moody. But like, the dude is just fucking nuts. He's just going around drinking from a flask, which you assume for most of it is alcohol. It could have just been water, could have been Polyjuice Potion, who knows. Again, I don't know. I can't. Do I take issue with the fake Mad Eye Moody or the real Mad Eye Moody, or who's to blame here? Because I'm assuming it's the fake one. Okay. Because the way he teaches a class, he's like, these are the 3 spells you never do. And then he's just like, does them all on a poor defenseless bug in front of his kids or his students. And it's like horrifying. He's like, he's controlling it, and that's, fine. having a bit of fun. I'm like, okay, I can see why that would be illegal, but at least it's not horrifying. And then he does Cruciatus, I think it was called. It's a torture spell. And he does it right in front of Neville. And I think like one of the big complaints I've seen of this from readers of the book is that they cut out a lot of the book. And this book apparently gives a lot of backstory to Neville. Neville's a really interesting character. I honestly would be like, tell me more about Neville, man. Fuck Harry Potter. I want to know about Neville. Because I learned a little bit more about Neville in the next movie as well. But it seems like basically his parents were like tortured and fucked up like beyond belief, where I'm like, you just tortured something in front of a guy who lost his parents to being like horribly tortured. It's like, damn, man. And then he just kills the thing. And you're like, huh. Okay. I assume that's the real Mad Eye Moody as well, because he invites Neville up for a cup of tea. I assume he wouldn't do that if he was the evil guy. The evil Moody was it Barty Crouch Jr., which is played by David Tennant. I don't know his Tennant in any of these movies, but I wish he's not even acting, man. He's just having a ball. He's just the most over top. He's just going around going like, hey. He's just snarling, going, Barty Crouch, the Dark Lord. Oh, it's just fun. The Triwizard Cup. We have, of course, Cedric Diggory in this, played by Robert Pattinson. I like Cedric Diggory as a character. I kind of feel like the way, like Harry Potter, everyone's like, Harry's the best. I'm kind of like, yeah, Cedric Diggory's probably better than Harry, isn't he? He just seems like he's a bit more modest, doesn't he? This is also the film where, we get a bit of the teenage hormones. A few, teenage kicks kick in. It's all about, like, mopey teenagers, which I just find so weird. I actually really enjoyed it. I guess that it says something about me that I'm like, yeah, teenage drama in my magic film. But I just found it so kind of lazy. Like, Ron and Harry just have a falling out very quickly for no real reason. It's just kind of like, oh, you're always getting the attention. I'm just Harry Potter's friend. And then they just kind of arbitrarily make up later. Although it's weird. Obviously I've seen these, like, as people have seen it before, and it kind of got a bit of a, like, when Ron says, piss off, everyone was like, oh my god. Is that a swear word? Can they say that? It's Harry Potter. Oh my god. I don't think that, like, there's also kind of the tension between Hermione and Ron, which it's like, ooh, what's going on there? They really kind of see this, sow the seed of the romance there, like, a lot more than I realised. I wonder I'm trying to remember where we are in the books at this point. Like, was that as teased out or what? But we have, a lot of kind of relationship-y stuff on that base, and this it's like, who am I going to ask to the dance? It's that kind of stuff. Like, it's weird. It becomes like a weird, like, American high school movie a little bit. But quite enjoyable, actually, strangely enough. I think I liked some of the more normal stuff in this, which I guess makes me a terrible Harry Potter fan. So Harry wants to go with Cho Chang, who has a very Scottish accent that's very disarming. Because, like, they give her, like, the most, like, Asian name ever. And then she's like, how's it going, Harry? And I'm like, oh, that was a surprise. I know there's some also people have raised issues about the character of Cho Chang and her name, but I don't know that. I meant to look it up and I didn't, because I'm so not the person to give a speech on that. We have Harry and Ron ended up going with twins, Parvati and Padma Patil, which I'm reading off Wikipedia here. I certainly didn't remember those. And Hermione gets some grade A arm candy in Crumb, who's like a Bulgarian, like, serious Quidditch player. And she just, like, don't know, she just easily gets him the bag or whatever. And it's weird. It's like this kind of, we get this big moment where, like, Hermione's in a dress and everyone's like, oh, she's beautiful. And it's weird because we obviously get that in a lot of these kind of movies where, like, it's like, Cinderella coming to the ball, like, wow. But at the same time, it's like, they make it, like, normally when that's a movie, it's like a big transition. I don't think, like, there's a big dramatic change between Emma Watson, like, through the course of the movie, and then she puts on a dress. It's like, she kind of looks pretty good normally. It's just kind of weird. I think that probably something that works more in a book, The standard in movie is always they have the glasses on and the hair up, and then they go like, whoo, which as someone who wears glasses, nah, man, don't do it. What's another thing that comes up in the film that I was not really entirely sure about is like the pensieve, which is like Dumbledore just takes his memories and like puts them in, and I just find that really weird. Like, why? Why do that? Why just like put your memories where anyone can see them? That seems like really, really dodgy. But anyway, because of that, we kind of find out a little bit about like, oh, this teacher was a Death Eater, and blah blah, and that doesn't really lead anywhere. I was like, oh, but I did like that kind of dynamic of, the teacher of the Bulgarian school is a former Death Eater, so there's a kind of a history there with Snape and with Dumbledore, and I'm like, ooh, interesting. Again, doesn't really go there, but I like Snape is such a great character. He's just great, man. He's kind of got depth to him. It kind of feels like his story is all what's happening in the background, but and I know we get a lot of that coming into later ones, but I know this is such a minor thing, but God, man, this movie and the next movie really made me miss Alan Rickman. And I know it's weird because he's in so many great films, but I just think it's so funny. Any scenes he has with like the kids, and he's just slapping the shit out of them. Like, there's a scene in this movie where he's just like beating Ron and Harry, like, and you're like, what sort of school is this, man? But I don't care. Just leave Alan Rickman do what he wants. The actual kind of quiz or challenges themselves in Triwizard Cup are kind of okay. The dragon one I just found like kind of meh. It's like, you're not allowed to use a broom, and it's like, oh, but you're allowed to conjure one or whatever. It's like, oh no, it's like you can't have a broom, but you can have a wand. It's like, okay, right, so you can just have anything then. Why even make that a rule? Like, come on. I don't know. Like, it's stupid. It's just I kind of feel like that works again. Probably in a book more than a film. Actually, probably doesn't work in a book either, to be honest. We have the weird one where they have to go to the mermaids of the lake. And it's so bad. This is what baffled me, because it's like, I think it's just more that Dumbledore makes it seem like all of this is like a real threat and people die. But if the competitors know that, like, the competitors think the people trapped on the lake are going to die, in which case, fucking hell, that Floor one really gave up easily on her sister, didn't she? She was just like, oh, well, no, I can't do it. And if she did think she was going to die, you would think she would have put more effort into it. But if they know they're not going to die, why did Harry bother even to save her? Because, like, that's nothing if she's fine. Yeah, it's weird. Like, underwater scenes in movies are rarely kind of exciting, in my opinion. They're just kind of tend to drag. Harry eats gillyweed. Really seems kind of like that was an obvious solution. They spend hours trying to figure out what to use. It's like, seems like that would be kind of obvious, to be honest. I mean, Neville knew it straight away. Seems like a pretty common one from the way they talk about it, but anyway. It's the same with the hedge maze, where like it's like, are they really do they really die? I mean, Flora gets eaten by the maze. I mean, you assume she doesn't die, and we see she's fine at the end. So why did you help Cedric at all if he's like, you just, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is it's Harry's fault. Cedric is dead. Cedric is getting eaten by the maze. If he's not going to die, you could just leave him and win the maze yourself. There was no point to you both winning anyway. Like, what good is that? Nah, anyway. Which, of course, brings us to the first proper appearance of Dumbledore, which I still don't really get, like, the Dumbledore progression. It's like he's on the back of a head, and then he's like Tom Rivera Riddle. I don't know, is he in the third one? I can't remember. And then he's like, is he like a baby or something in the third one or something? He's a baby in a couple of these. And here he's actually properly Dumbledore, which I actually think is really cool and quite scary, actually, if you were a kid. His appearance in this one. It's way better. Like the later ones, he just looks like guy without nose, standard kind of makeup job. This one, he's like reptilian. He's kind of monstrous looking. He looks way better in this film, I think, than in the later entries, if you ask me. Which you didn't. Like, he just has a kind of menace to him. I think Ray Fiennes does a good job as Voldemort in general. And it's, again, I don't get. I find it really weird. Again, the magic in this film, like, is again it's that thing where like sometimes they're not saying spells, sometimes they are saying spells. I don't know why they have to say it sometimes and not say it other times. If you can get away with never saying it, why ever say it at all? Then you're just telegraphing what you're going to do. And then all the like half the time there's a big wizard fight. It's just the most boring thing because it's just like, I've got a wand, and then the other person's like, I have a wand, and there's just two beams of energy just going. That's not interesting or fun or like it's not even visually exciting. Like if that was done like 40 years ago, I'd be like, wow, how did they do special effects? It's like, man, it looks like Ghostbusters. All right, we get it. Like it's not very exciting. So yeah, that's kind of fine. After all that, it's kind of weird. Like it feels like that would be the natural point of the film to end, but then it just keeps going with like, hey, it's actually fake. This is fake Moody. Blah blah. They drink and he gets sent to Azkaban. Another weird magic thing that annoys me. They have the tents at the World Cup, which are tiny on the outside and then massive on the inside. Why not do that all the time? Like why not just do that every time? Why not just have a tiny house that looks small and go into it? You might say, oh, because of muggles, but like there's magic in all these houses anyway. Harry's got a moving frame, and I know you could say, oh, well, that looks like that's like a video screen or whatever, but it's like the Weasley's house is full of magic shit as well. It's like, why? You might as well just do that. Just give every wizard a tiny house that a human will never find, and then they can walk inside it, and it's massive. Grant, sorted. Get them to live in a bin. No one is going to jump into a bin, and then it's just a massive house. I don't know. Yeah, Mad-Eye Moody's fake. It turns out he was Barty Crouch Jr. Barty Crouch Sr. is just like in the film. I think it's played by a man from Only Fools and Horses, isn't it? Is that Trigger in Only Fools and Horses, I think? He gets killed. Pretty simply. I was going to talk about Mad-Eye Moody as well as the teacher. And again, I don't know is this the real Mad-Eye Moody or the fake Mad-Eye Moody, but regardless of any universe, this is like... you can't be a teacher after this. So he turns Malfoy into a ferret at one point. Okay, not great. He floats the ferret up and down. It's funny. It's entertaining. But then he crosses the line, man. You put a ferret, a student, down another student's pants. What the fuck? That's... What even... How do you even... Like, that's forced sexual... harassment. I don't know what that is, but that's not legal, man. That I don't care if you're a wizard or not. That put him in Azkaban. Like, ooh, I don't know how he still has a job after that. Yeah, there's real favoritism going on in Hogwarts. It feels like anytime McGonagall sees like a good person do something, she's like, oh, it's grand. But then an evil person she's like, no way. Yeah, it's grand. The film kind of ends, in my opinion, kind of just in a whatever way. As I said, kind of Cedric and Voldemort are kind of like the big kind of capping moment. It does feel weird that like they're like Lucius Malfoy. They see Lucius Malfoy as like a Death Eater, and then it's just kind of like, they're still like, oh, he's evil or whatever. But it doesn't. It's kind of weird that not more people are like, hey, he's clear. He's like he's a bad guy. He's clearly a Death Eater. Feels like people don't really care. Dumbledore's like, Voldemort killed Cedric. No one wants to tell you. No, I'm just reading the end here. Dumbledore later visits Harry in his dormitory, apologising for the dangers he endured. Again, Hogwarts is this kind of place where I'm like, this can't function as a school. There's so much dangerous shit here. Like I was saying with the last one, they're just like, yeah, we leave the Dementors near the school grounds. Even though I know they don't want to, but it's still kind of like, that would be the equivalent of like having armed guards just around the school constantly. If that's worse. Harry reveals that he saw his parents in the graveyard. Dumbledore names this effect as Priory Incantum. Oh yeah, he sees his parents as ghosts. And his parents are like, Harry, make a break for it. And I'm just like, how does that work? So could he just like talk to his parents at any time then, if there's a way to get that going? I don't know. Anyway. I do like the very ending. Like they're kind of just walking away. It just feels like a real kind of capping moment where we're now officially at the point where things are going to get kind of serious or evil, where they're just like kind of everything's going to change, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, basically. But it's quite charming. I do like the kind of teenage drama stuff in this, surprisingly. Ron's suit, he looks like a scarecrow lawyer. Yeah, I actually enjoy this. It's one of my better ones, in my opinion. I actually think it's pretty good. It's entertaining, but again, can't get over some of my gripes from Harry Potter. It does feel like there's some of these films where they're like, Voldemort is a bad guy, and then they're like, okay, well, what's going on with Voldemort? They're like, we have a couple more books, like, just slow it down. It kind of felt like when they introduced Thanos in the first Avengers film, they're like, okay, and now what's he going to do? Well, just wait, we'll tease him a lot. Feels like they could have done more of Voldemort, or I don't know, it just feels like they keep mentioning him, and half the time he does nothing. I felt like that way in the next one as well a bit, but we'll get to that in the next time. Next time we do Tommy Potter and the Podcast of Gripes. But until then, we're going to get on with our features. Hey nerd, it's summer, and I've been talking and teasing, rhyming and stealing about the Summer Blockbuster Showdown for a while now, but I can finally tell you a little bit more about it. So, over the last couple of weeks, I've picked 100 films from the last 20 years of summer blockbuster seasons. And I need to narrow those down to just one, because only one film can be champion and wear the crown above my head. So, how's that going to work? I've picked 5 films from each year and put them into groups, and in these groups, they're going to be scored on critical acclaim and cultural impact, originality, and of course, we're talking about blockbusters here, so it's all about the money. How much money did they make? How much money did it cost? And did it launch a franchise to make even more mucho dinero? And based on that, the number 1 film in the group is going to go ahead to round 2, composed of 32 films, meaning that 20 films in first place are all going to go through. The films in second place will fight against each other for one of those spots, with only 10 of those getting through, meaning we have 30 of our 32 films. 2 of those spots, I get to pick. If I say a film that maybe got hard done by, or I think deserves a shot at the title, it goes through. And once we get down to those 32 films, I'm going to need your help to find the winner of the Summer Blockbuster Showdown. Without further ado, we are going to get started. And as naturally we would do, we're going to start with the year 2000. Okay? So, our 5 films in the 2000 group: Gladiator, Mission Impossible 2, X-Men, Perfect Storm, and Dinosaur. Now you're like, what? Dinosaur? Okay. There's a kind of big debate as well about blockbusters. Can you have a comedy blockbuster? Can you have an animated blockbuster? I think comedy you can, depending on the budget, but I think especially in more recent times, a lot of films have kind of incorporated comedy, that the kind of high concept, big budget comedy is kind of gone. Now, I don't actually know is there any comedy in any of these groups, to be honest with you. I don't think there is off the top of my head. Animated films, I think you absolutely can have a blockbuster animated film. I know we generally think of blockbusters as big dumb action movies a lot of the time, but like if an animated film costs $200 million and it makes over $1 billion, like come on. By any definition, that's a blockbuster. If it costs a lot of money, if it makes a lot of money, I would consider it a blockbuster. And that's why animated films are being considered. Okay? So we have 5 films here. All of these films made the top 10 in the year 2000. We're going to go through the box office, the cost, its originality, its acclaim and cultural impact, and then franchise. Okay? As I said, it gets a 1 to 5 mark in each one. It's ranked from 1 to 5. If it gets 1, that's very, very good. 1 is the best you can get, because the lower the point at the end, the more likely to go through. I have all of these marked already on my computer, but I cannot see the results until now. So, highest grossing film that year was Mission Impossible 2, making $546.3 million. Again, none of these are adjusted for inflation. Second place box office was Gladiator, $460 million. Dinosaur, $349 million. Perfect Storm, 328, and then X-Men, just under 300 million. Okay, so naturally the box office has gone in order. 1 point to Mission Impossible because it was the highest grossing film that year. X-Men, lowest grossing film of those 5, gets a number 5, and so on and so forth. When it comes to cost, it's interesting. It's very, very close. Mission Impossible cost 125 million. Gladiator 103 million. Dinosaur just edges out Mission Impossible, the most expensive film of the year, 127.5 million. That's why you have to consider something like animation. Like, you wouldn't think that. It's been mostly forgotten as a film, but that's the most expensive film of the year. So The Perfect Storm, 120 million, and X-Men 75 million. So because of that, the cost, number 1 is going to Dinosaur, number 5 is X-Men because it's the lowest, 2 to Mission Impossible, 3 to Perfect Storm, 4 to Gladiator. Okay, now we come to originality. Okay, Mission Impossible 2. Is it original? Number 1, it's a sequel. That's going to hurt it. It's also a reboot of a TV series. So that hurts it in originality. The reason we're giving marks to originality is because if something is a bit more original, it feels like people are, we can give it a bit more credos as a blockbuster, because if it is a success, it feels like a bigger success, and if it spawns a franchise off an original idea or something that feels a bit less stale, it'll likely have longer legs. So for example, if you have a reboot of Spider-Man that makes a lot of money, yeah, people are going to go see it because it's Spider-Man. But as it goes on, if it doesn't feel like it's original, people are going to abandon it. And we do see that with franchises going through this. Gladiator, surprisingly, and I didn't know this, Gladiator is inspired by a book. Now, very loosely inspired. It's like your man read a book and was like, hey, this would be a good film. And then kind of did his own thing. But it loses its edge just about there when it comes to originality. Because our next film is entirely original, Dinosaur. So that means Dinosaur is going to get 1 point, which is really good and really surprising, because considering the cost of the film, it's almost as a film of the year. It's looking pretty good now, even though it's a shit film no one remembers. Perfect Storm is based on a book by Sebastian Junger. X-Men is a comic. I mean, you could also say it was a cartoon. So again, going to lose a lot of marks on originality there for X-Men. So originality, Dinosaur gets a number 1. Gladiator gets a number 2. Perfect Storm 3 is based on a book. X-Men, it's a comic and it's been a cartoon, so 4 points. Mission Impossible, again, a sequel and a reboot, 5. So it loses marks on originality. The acclaim and cultural impact. So this is like, do people remember the film? Did it affect things outside of just the film itself? Like, for example, like as we get to later years, did it become a meme? Did it have a hit song? Did it have some good tie-in merchandise, etc.? So, and also, of course, if it won awards, and it did well critically. Mission Impossible 2 has a 57 Rotten Tomatoes. The audience rating for that is even lower. It got nominated for Razzies. It had a soundtrack, though, that did have hits for Limp Bizkit and Metallica. So that's kind of, outside of the film itself, that's probably its biggest cultural impact. Songs from Limp Bizkit and Metallica. In fact, Limp Bizkit actually covered like the theme, and they did their own thing with them. Gladiator, on the other hand, massive cultural impact. 48 awards, including Best Picture. It helped bring back historical epics and it helped launch Hans Zimmer to new heights, and the score itself inspired a lot of scores going forward. Massive. A lot of the stuff in this film from Hans Zimmer, you kind of hear bits and pieces of it again. A lot of, like, if you hear like choral singing in big action scenes, that's there. And the kind of big sword and sandal epics that kind of died, and this kind of brought them back. Probably briefly, if we're honest, but still. It brings us to Dinosaur. 64 Rotten Tomatoes, 48% audience score. There were some nominations for animation, but no wins. Like, no one remembers this film. You might remember the poster now when you're seeing it, but that's about it. Perfect Storm, 2 Oscar nominations for effects and sound. 47 Rotten Tomatoes score, 64 from the audience. If this has any cultural impact, it's probably the poster. People remember the poster of like the boat almost like vertical. That's kind of it, in my opinion. X-Men. 1 Saturn Awards. Again, Saturn Awards, lesser award, not a big deal. 81 from Rotten Tomatoes, 83 audience score. So the audience does like a more. That's something you have to remember as well. If the audience score is higher, possibly did have a cultural impact because people are willing to go to bat for the film. The biggest impact X-Men has. This is like one of the first big budget superhero movies, and it really being a success, it gets a lot of people to kind of say, well, what superhero properties do we have? Obviously, it was Blade before, that was R-rated, that was a bit more obscure. And obviously you can go back further to like Superman, the Batman films, but this was like reinventing it for new millennium. And because of that, the cultural impact on this one is huge. So I'm putting that at number 1. Number 2, I'm giving to Gladiator, massive for scores and historical epics. Mission Impossible, just because of the soundtrack, it gets a 3. Number 4, Perfect Storm, and Dinosaur number 5. Because it's not remembered at all. Franchise. Okay, so this is a question of, did it spawn a lot of sequels? Did it help the franchise or damage the franchise going forward? Okay. Mission Impossible 2, 4 sequels and counting, even though it took a while for them to happen. It did keep the franchise going, and considering it was best grossing film of the year, that's not surprising. Gladiator. Surprisingly, Gladiator did have at one stage a sequel being worked on. Never happened, was never likely to happen, but it gets points for that because they did consider it because of how big its success was. Dinosaur never got a sequel, The Perfect Storm never got a sequel, so they're not going to get big points in that category. X-Men, 12 films and counting. We're still waiting on New Mutants, surprisingly, so because of that, there is still the franchise going, so that is major points for that. So that gets number 1 because of how many sequels it inspired, and number 2 I'll give to Mission Impossible. Gladiator gets a 3 just because the sequel was worked on. That's about it. Okay, now I have the scores. I'm going to add them up here. The computer's adding up, I should say. Okay, that's a bit of a shocker. Lowest score is actually a tie, which means I'm going to go first and second. So both of the films walked away with 13. The one in first place goes straight through. The one in second goes into a fight. I'm going to say one is second. I'm going to give this film a thumbs up. Gladiator, I'm sending through the first. Mission Impossible 2, you're going down to second place. That just means that Mission Impossible 2 is going to have to fight to get to the last round of 32. 2001 has a couple of big films. We have, of course, the behemoth that is Shrek, Jurassic Park 3, which was kind of the end of that franchise at one point. The Mummy Returns, which almost was the end of that franchise. Pearl Harbor, massive film. And, of course, Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. So these are the 5 films in our group for 2001. So let's get to scoring those and finding out how we got on. Few notes as well, we should mention. This is a strange year. Because, to be honest, some of the bigger films came out towards the end of the year. The first Harry Potter comes out at the end of this year. Lord of the Rings, the first Lord of the Rings, comes out at the end of this year. Monsters Inc. comes out in November, which is also a big hit. And Ocean's 11 also comes out later in the year. They missed the summer date, so there's surprisingly a few big summer releases being left out because of that. For this, the way I calculated summer was, the obvious summer window we have for films is May, June, July, and August. If a film was released late April or in April with the idea that it would have legs into the summer, I counted it assuming it was number 1 with a decent gross in the first weekend of the summer. There are some films that kind of got kicked out because they didn't have that in April. There's other films that started at the end of April that showed legs into May, and because of that, they were eligible for summer. Because we have a tradition now where films kind of kick off the summer. Marvel films especially do that, as we'll see later on. So Shrek is a massive film. Out of these films, it is the biggest one. Obviously not the biggest one of the year, in a year with Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. But it made $487 million, which was the 4th highest grossing film of the year. Pearl Harbor was the 6th highest grossing film of the year. Mummy Returns, $433 million, kind of in between them there. Bit of a fault for our 4th one here. Jurassic Park 3 made $368 million. And just above our 5th place, which is Planet of the Apes. This is the first time where 2 films passed 800 million in the same year. That was, of course, none of these films. That was Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. So that was Shrek is the highest grossing one, so Shrek gets a 1. And Planet of the Apes 5 because it's the lowest. So when I named them in order at the start, that's the box office. Because I picked basically the 5 highest grossing films that came out that summer in all of these. Mostly it was in the top 10. The cost, okay? Shrek, 60 million. That's shocking. Shrek and a lot of the DreamWorks stuff is a lot cheaper than you would think. And it works against them for this kind of category. Pearl Harbor, on the other hand, Michael Bay movies always cost a bucket load, which we'll see as we get to the Transformer franchise later. 140 million. Most expensive film. That's going in at number 1. Mummy Returns, 98, just about over Jurassic Park 3, 93 million. And Planet of the Apes, just above the 2 of them at 100 million. So because of that, Pearl Harbor's number 1. Planet of the Apes number 2. 3 and 4 goes to Mummy and Jurassic Park, and Shrek comes in at number 5. So that means that Pearl Harbor right now is sitting pretty, man. Pearl Harbor has a 2 and a 1 going into originality. And again, the originality is going to suit it here as well. Pearl Harbor might squeak through this round. Shrek is based on a book. Not a lot of people realize that. So because of that, it loses a bit of points on originality. Now, based on a book is one of the softer points because sometimes people haven't read the book. So because of that, I score a bit lightly with it's based on a book more than, say, a sequel. Pearl Harbor is biographical. It's based in a true story. It's based in kind of history. It has historical figures, but it's an original story as far as I know. So because of that, it gets a 1 for originality. Pearl Harbor is doing very good. Pearl Harbor might take this round, which means it would be a shocking addition, but I mean, certainly feels like a blockbuster, so you can't take that away from it. Sequel, Mummy is a sequel, so there we go. I mean, you could also say, is it a sequel just to the Stephen Sommers movie? Is it, technically a sequel to the Mummy series by Universal in general? I just assumed it as a sequel to the Stephen Sommers movie. I don't think you can put like Lon Chaney or whoever the fuck, or Boris Karloff, I think I was actually against, this kind of film, and say it was a sequel. We get Jurassic Park 3. It's the second sequel to the Jurassic Park franchise. So, again, losing a bit of points there. And then we have a reboot. Reboots, I scored the lowest for originality because it's literally, generally speaking, giving us the same film that we already had and trying again. Whereas a sequel, at least, you can try and build a few more ideas there. Based on that originality, Pearl Harbor, as I said, is number 1. Shrek is number 2 because it's only based on a book. Jurassic Park 3 is at the last place because it's the second sequel. Yeah, it's the second sequel, so okay, I will put that at number 5. Planet of the Apes gets a 3. Mummy Returns a 4 because it's just the first sequel. So, close. Very close. Then we come to the acclaim and cultural impact. Okay? Shrek has a massive cultural impact here. Okay? Change animation style and casting. I mean, stunt casting and celebrity casting was a way bigger thing after this film. We had major cultural touchstone. The soundtrack was all over the place. Everyone was on about Shrek. It was like kind of changed the game. It won the first ever animated feature film Oscar, and much to the disappointment of Pixar, I would say. That DreamWorks got the first one. It really, to be honest, established DreamWorks as a competitor to Pixar. You cannot understate the importance of Shrek if you're looking at animation. It changes a lot of things for better and for worse. As I said, the soundtrack was a smash hit. Rotten Tomatoes scores 88. It has a 90 from the audience. It's still a meme to this day. It's number 1 without a doubt. The cultural impact of Shrek is massive. Then we have another film that, again, is continuing to surprise. Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor got 4 Oscar nominations, and they were mostly technical, to be fair. But it did win 1. It had 6 Razzies. First time a Razzie nominated Worst Picture won an Oscar. So there you go. That's a minor cultural impact. Rotten Tomatoes score 24. Audience score is much higher at 66. So again, you're looking at people that might have more of an impact than we realize on people. It did spawn a successful single, There You'll Be from Faith Hill. So again, doing pretty well. I think Pearl Harbor is kind of benefiting here from being in maybe a weaker year aside from Shrek. That's really what the battle is going to be between Shrek and Pearl Harbor. Imagine that sentence: Shrek versus Pearl Harbor. Mummy Returns, very few notable awards. 47 Rotten Tomatoes, slightly better audience score at 63. Nothing great. We get Jurassic Park 3. Very few noteworthy awards here compared to some of the other Jurassic Park films. Rotten Tomatoes scores 49. The audience score is even lower. Not good. Not a lot of love for this film. We then get Planet of the Apes, Tim Burton version. Again, high critical score than audience score. Not very liked. Not a good impact. Number 1 is going to Shrek. Number 2 is going to Pearl Harbor. 3, 4, and 5 is almost arbitrary. That none of those had a massive cultural impact. Then we get to franchise. This is where it's going to kind of separate here, I'd say, between Michael Bay and Shrek, possibly. Shrek spawned a musical, TV specials, a series, a theme park ride, and, of course, spin-offs and sequels. It created a franchise. When you create a franchise off your first film, you can't argue with that. That's exactly what you need. And if it's a franchise as strong as Shrek and as successful as Shrek, it's absolutely going to get the number 1. So Shrek is number 1 for franchise. Pearl Harbor inspired nothing. So that gets a 5. That's the worst score Pearl Harbor's got so far. When it comes to The Mummy, we get a spin-off. Scorpion King is introduced here. That benefits it slightly. Eventually we get a sequel years later. It didn't really launch anything. It kind of felt like it damaged the franchise, to be honest. So as a result, I'll give it a 2 because it has a sequel and a spin-off. So based on that, it gets it. Jurassic Park is eventually rebooted. I mean, it's kind of a sequel, but let's be honest, it's killed the franchise for a while. Same with Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes does come back, but they kind of have to reboot it and just forget about that. I'm going to give a higher score to Planet of the Apes because it came back sooner than Jurassic Park. So number 1 is going to Shrek. Number 5 is going to Pearl Harbor. 2 is going to The Mummy because it did bring us the Scorpion King films, which were modest success. Number 3 is going to Planet of the Apes because it came back soon, and then Jurassic Park is 4. So looking at the scores, what's going through here? What is going through as number 1? What is going into the second round to fight to get through? It's adding them up here. Oh, okay. Just by a point, Shrek is going through to the round of 32. So Shrek is officially qualified. Pearl Harbor, just behind by 1 point, is going to go in second place to fight to come back and possibly make it into the round of 32, which is surprising. I mean, I don't think anyone called Pearl Harbor doing okay, but here we are. ...2002 is a massive year for a few reasons, actually. It's not as simple as just the year being big, but getting started with that, we had the first year to have 3 films past $800 million. We have Spider-Man, which is the first film to make over $100 million on an opening weekend. And it's also the first time a Star Wars film is not the highest grossing film of the year. So, when we look at 2002, there's a few other things we should get through. The 5 films that we get through from this are Spider-Man, Signs, surprisingly, Star Wars Episode 2, Men in Black, and Minority Report. Now, as far as the box office release goes, number 1 is Spider-Man. Biggest film of the year, $821 million. Star Wars Episode 2, $653 million. Men in Black 2, $441 million. Signs, $408 million. And Minority Report, $358 million. So a lot of high figures there, especially towards the top. Actually, I think Spider-Man actually wasn't the highest grossing film of the year. I said that it was, but I get the feeling that might have been Lord of the Rings that year, actually. But of course, the two other $800 million films that year were Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. So yeah, it's a big year as far as that goes. I mean, it's crazy when we're doing this because Lord of the Rings is never a summer franchise. It's always winter, even when the Hobbit films come out. So it's never under consideration. The Harry Potter ones alternate for a while there, where sometimes they're out in Christmas, sometimes they're out in summer. So Spider-Man was actually only number 3 film. Lord of the Rings was the first film, the number 1 film of the year, and Harry Potter was number 2. So Star Wars is quite down that list. And when it comes to box office again, in order, Spider-Man number 1, Star Wars 2, Men in Black 2 is number 3 in the ranking, Signs is 4, and Minority Report is 5. As it comes to the cost, Spider-Man is $139 million. Star Wars, $115 million. Just beating Spider-Man is Men in Black 2 with $140 million budget. Signs is $72 million. One of the lowest budgets throughout this whole competition, actually. But with inflation, it probably does a bit better. And Minority Report, $102 million. Surprisingly low for Minority Report. Because of that, number 1 is going to Men in Black by an absolute hair. It beats Spider-Man by $1 million in budget. Spider-Man number 2. Star Wars is number 3. And Minority Report 4. Signs 5. Originality. This is where some of these are going to get hurt. Spider-Man is a comic. It is the first Spider-Man movie, really. Some people would say certain things, but that is the first big Spider-Man movie, at least. So because of that, it gets... it depends on some of these other ones, but it might just do middle of the road originality. Comics are kind of same kind of thing as books as far as originality go, the way I rate them. Star Wars Episode 2 is a sequel. Now, again, you can debate whether that's the second sequel, because we're in a new trilogy, or the 5th sequel. But, Men in Black 2, it's a sequel, and it's based on a comic. Based on a Men in Black is a Malibu comic, I think. Signs is original. So because of that, it's going to be benefited. Minority Report is based on a short story. So again, since it's just a short story, going to benefit it as far as originality goes. So Signs is getting a number 1, Minority Report getting a 2. Spider-Man lands in the middle with 3. Star Wars Episode 2 gets a 4, and Men in Black 2 gets a 5 on that one. Which brings us into acclaim and cultural impact. Okay. Spider-Man, superhero blockbuster. It birthed the Spidey franchise, which is of course massive. And the summer kind of blockbuster, I would say, is really kicked up a notch by Spider-Man. I think this kind of was the blockbuster of its time. It really kind of showed how to do it as far as a summer blockbuster movie goes. Obviously, it wasn't his first summer blockbuster movie, but I think this is like the modern summer blockbuster. I think a lot of places ape this. So we have 2 Oscar nominations, a successful musical single, and they say that a hero would save us. That wasn't great. I'm just eyeing up my water. My voice is getting scraggly. This is like being a sports commentator, man. Oh, everybody, welcome to the box office Summer Blockbuster Showdown. If you can't see on the video, I just popped down a little arrow on my headset because it makes me look more sporty. This is the closest to sport I'm getting, isn't it? So yeah, the Chad Kroeger single "Hero" it was a hit. It wasn't a Nickelback single, despite what people think. It was just him and some other guys. So yeah, based on that, I mean, cultural impact, it being a blockbuster and giving us the Spider-Man franchise, two big things there. It gets a 1. It's going away with the top spot there. It's the first Star Wars film to be outgrossed in that year. It's often seen as the worst in the series. It does better with critics than audiences. It gets 1 Oscar nomination. In a lesser year, or in a better year, this would be down a notch. But the fact that it's a Star Wars sequel means that its cultural impact is still big. So it gets a 2 there, which is very lucky for Star Wars Episode 2. Men in Black 2, I mean, the cultural impact, it basically killed the franchise. Even the Will Smith song was forgotten. I mean, it was Nod Your Head, in case you're like, what was the song in Men in Black 2? Nod Your Head, because the black suits come in. It's not like, it's no Men in Black song. Even though they tried as much to make this the same as the first one. So that gets a 5. Signs, it's referenced quite a bit. Even, anytime you see a cornfield. And it's thought highly at the time. Arguably, it's kind of fallen in a lot of people's estimation. It does slightly better with audiences and critics with a 74 and a 67 on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, I'd give it a 3. Again, I think in a stronger year, this would be down a bit. Minority Report, it's an Oscar nominee. It has been referenced when it comes to rising use of technology, but it's surprising how weak the cultural impact on that one is. It's kind of been forgotten as time has gone on. So 92 from critics, 80 from audience. I'm going to give this a 4 on cultural impact. Signs is just about edging it out, which is a surprise, but I think when people talk about films, I think that's kind of remember a little bit more. Franchise, Spider-Man, of course, launches 2 sequels. I mean, it launches eventually reboots, I guess. Games, etc. I think the franchise one has to go straight to that. Star Wars Episode 2 has another sequel. I mean, it's a Star Wars thing. You could probably say it spawns the rest of Star Wars, but I think I'll give that a 2, just because it has a sequel. Men in Black 2, we don't get a sequel for 10 years, so that gets a 3. There's no sequel to Sign, so that gets a 5. Minority Report, there's a TV series that didn't have a great reception. It was quickly cancelled, but I guess it cashed in on its name, so I'll give it a 4. It just because Signs didn't do anything. So based on that, where are our scores for 2002? First place is, no surprise, Spider-Man is probably the lowest score we've had so far with an 8. Spider-Man is getting through, and Star Wars Episode 2 is fighting for second place. So that's a bit of a surprise. But it's, again, I think Star Wars Episode 2 is lucky for later here. To be honest, it's going to be like, when I have to find something to go through in second place, it's going to be like, which one do I hate the least? Yeah, so Star Wars is going into second place to fight. We get some big releases in 2003 as well that set some records that would eventually be broken, but we'll give them that talk anyway. Nemo, Nemo is a bit of a controversial one. I'll mention in a sec. So it's the highest grossing animated film until Shrek 2, first of all, but I mean, Shrek 2 comes out pretty soon after, but it was still a very high gross, very impressive. Matrix was the highest R-rated film until Deadpool, and then eventually Joker would break Deadpool's record. Still pretty impressive. But so the films we have that year: Finding Nemo, Matrix Reloaded, Curse of the Black Pearl, Terminator 3, and X-Men 2. Now, all of that being said, Finding Nemo is a controversial one here. I know it's weird to think Finding Nemo is controversial. Finding Nemo was released in summer in America and a few other territories, but it has a very gradual rollout aside from that. I didn't think this was a summer movie at all, because when it came to Ireland, it was like November, I think. And that's the case with a lot of countries, but since we're going by box office and cost in dollars, I decided to include it. Controversial decision, maybe. I'm going to allow it. It was such a high grossing thing. It was a blockbuster. It did start in the summer. It does kind of have a summery feel to it anyway. It's kind of surprising they brought it out like closer to winter in some places, but based on that, I'm allowing Nemo. Might be controversial, but it's my podcast, fuck you. Box office, number 1 is Finding Nemo, 871 million. Matrix Reloaded, 739 million. Interesting. Matrix will get a sequel coming out in about 6 months after that. Purse of the Black Pearl 654 million, Terminator 3 433, and X-Men 407. The costs. Finding Nemo cost 94 million. Matrix Reloaded 150 million. Curse of the Black Pearl 140 million. Terminator 3 187 million. Massive budget on Terminator 3 there. And X-Men 2 110 million. I think a lot of that is actually Arnold. I think Arnold got paid like 30 million for the movie or something. Right. What do we do with originality? Finding Nemo is new. So, gets a 1 in originality. When it comes to cost, Finding Nemo got a 5 because its budget was the lowest out of this one. Of course, Terminator 3 was number 1. Matrix Reloaded number 2. Curse of Black Pearl 3. And X-Men 2 was 4. So, when it comes to the other ones, Matrix Reloaded is a sequel. Okay. So, because of that, it loses a point. Pirates of the Caribbean is an interesting one. Pirates of the Caribbean is based on a ride. There's not a massive story attached to the ride. So, because of that, its originality, it does do okay. Because of that, it gets a 2 in originality. It's just behind Finding Nemo as far as originality. Matrix Reloaded, since it's just the first sequel, gets a 3. Terminator 3, it's like the second sequel. X-Men 2 is only its first sequel, and it's based on a comic. So because of that, X-Men 2 gets a 4, Terminator 3 gets a 5, because Terminator 3 also basically just copied Terminator 2. So because of that, lose points in originality. And at the moment, things are looking pretty good for Nemo. Or Pirates of the Caribbean, actually. Alright. We have a war here. 2 Disney properties. Claim/cultural impact. Okay. Rotten Tomatoes score. For Finding Nemo, 99 for critics. 86 for audiences. It's considered one of Pixar's best films. Oh, excuse me. It still shows relevancy. It, just keeps moving. People always remember that. It won the Oscar for animated feature and is recognized by the American Film Institute for its importance. That's pretty major. That's a rarity in a lot of these lists. When we come to the next film, The Matrix Reloaded, it's generally derided as one of the Matrix sequels. Since they released these films so close to each other, as I said, they released one in summer and one that winter. They're kind of both just lumped in as Matrix sequel, and people don't like the Matrix sequels, which is not helping here. It just kind of makes the film feel a bit, whatever, kind of easily forgotten. It's indistinguishable basically for a lot of people. Its legacy is kind of damaged as a result of that, especially its Matrix sequel. The Rotten Tomatoes score and the audience scores for this are way higher than I expected. 73 and 72. That was shocking. With Pirates of the Caribbean, it was a massive hit. It established the character of Jack Sparrow, who's a massive kind of cultural character. It was a defining summer blockbuster and would be for a lot of years to come for Disney. Rotten Tomatoes score is 79. Audience score is 86. That's always a good sign. It had 5 Oscar nominations. I think you have to give it to this one. I think that's number 1, certainly for cultural impact and acclaim. So number 1, I'm giving to Pirates of the Caribbean. Number 2 is going to Finding Nemo. Terminator 3, like a lot of people see it as the downfall of the Terminator franchise. Did much worse with audiences than critics, giving that a 5 there. X-Men 2, considered one of the best X-Men films, less goofy than its predecessor. 85 critics and audiences agree. And a better year probably would have a higher score cultural impact, but it's getting a 3 here because of the competition from Pirates and from Nemo. Franchise, eventually Finding Nemo gets a sequel. Sequel was already in production for The Matrix, so because of that, this film doesn't have an effect on it. They were produced at the same time, so because of that, it doesn't help it. Pirates of the Caribbean launches a franchise, so massive cultural thing there. Eventually, Terminator is rebooted, and then rebooted again, and then rebooted again. X-Men, that keeps the franchise strong. It did earn a little bit more than its predecessor, so because of that, it does well. So number 1, I'm going to give to Pirates. It launches a franchise. You can't argue against that. X-Men keeps the franchise going strong, and for bigger entries up ahead, so that gets to number 2. We'd already had a sequel for The Matrix coming, so it didn't really affect it, so that got to number 5. Nemo does get a sequel eventually, so I'm giving that a number 3. This is a bit of a competitive year. I'd say if I had to guess, these scores are going to come down to Pirates and Clownfish with Finding Nemo. Okay, so let's see how these Sea Dogs do. Oh, we have an upset. Do we? No, we don't. Oh, that would have been too exciting, wouldn't it? Okay. We have number 1 is going to Curse of the Black Pearl. Number 2 is Finding Nemo. I thought it was going to be the other way around, folks. I got to tell you. So Pirates of the Caribbean, Black Pearl goes through. Finding Nemo is fighting its way for second. big films here in 2004. Of course, we have the sequel to Spider-Man, Shrek 2, massive film, Harry Potter 3, I just talked about that earlier, and then Troy, which is a bit of an anomaly in that group, along with The Day After Tomorrow. So, number one grossing film of the year, Shrek 2. As I mentioned, it's the highest grossing animated film now, or was. Sorry, at the time. It's obviously not now. Now we have now we got billions of dollar movies. This one only made 928 million. Imagine only 928 million. What a chump Shrek 3 is, or Shrek 2. Well, Shrek 3 is a chump, but Shrek 2 Shrek 2 is a chump as well. 928 million for Shrek 2. Harry Potter, surprisingly, did a bit worse here. 795 million. Harry Potter 3 is a bit of a step down from the previous films. Spider-Man 2, 788 million. Also a bit of a step down from its previous entry here. That is going to hurt a little bit. Day After Tomorrow, 552 million. And Troy, just under 497 million. So that's how we go from 1 to 5. Cost, 150 million for Shrek 2. 130 million for Harry Potter 3. That's quite cheap, actually. Spider-Man 2, 200 million. Massive budget. These Spider-Man films' budgets gets crazy high. Keep an eye on them. Day After Tomorrow, 125 million. And Troy, 185 million. Notoriously expensive. So, the most expensive film there was Spider-Man 2, of course, number 1. Troy gets number 2. What gets then? Shrek is number 3. Harry Potter number 4. And Day After Tomorrow number 5, just about. Then we have originality. Shrek is a sequel and based on a book. Harry Potter is, second sequel and a book. Spider-Man 2 is a sequel and a book. Day After Tomorrow is very loosely based on a book, believe it or not. It's like a book about like slightly fictionalized stories about global warming. So, yeah, very loosely. Troy is based on Homer's Iliad, again loosely. So, surprisingly, the originality ones here are going to Day After Tomorrow at number 1, and Troy as number 2. And then Shrek, it's the first sequel. It's based on a book, number 3. Spider-Man is a better known character as a book as well. Comic and a sequel, number 4. Harry Potter, second sequel and a book, number 5. So yeah, that actually hurts some of the bigger fish here, surprisingly. Acclaim and cultural impact. Okay, Shrek 2. 2 Oscar nominations. Massive soundtrack, seen by many as the best Shrek. It managed to kind of keep up with Shrek 1, which was no small feat. It had some hit singles, the soundtrack was big. Massive cultural impact. So yeah, we'll have to see how that progresses. Harry Potter 3, it's the lowest grossing Harry Potter film. It's seen as kind of the dark Harry Potter film. 2 Oscar nominations. Rotten Tomatoes score is 90. Audience score is 86. The fact... See, the problem with a lot of these franchises that run long, especially the successful ones where it's almost like a foregone conclusion it's going to be a franchise, the cultural impact is lessened because eventually it's just like a sequel, So I think that's going to hurt Harry in a minute. Spider-Man 2 made less than its predecessor. Rotten Tomatoes score 93, audience score of 82. Helped by a massively successful video game tie-in that people still talk about. Up until the most recent Spider-Man game, people were like, that's the best Spider-Man game, so that helps. It won an Oscar and was nominated for 2 others. It's seen as the best Spider-Man film by many, and one of the best superhero films in general. Again, the box office is lesser, which hurts it a little bit, so might just about squeak by, actually. Day After Tomorrow, mostly forgotten, except for maybe the poster art of the Frozen Statue of Liberty. Yeah, I mean, did you remember this film? Troy, again, the director's cut of the film garnered a little additional impact. People don't really remember it. Even putting it up with other director's cuts, they don't do that. It's mostly remembered just for being a misfire and being so expensive. So that is a cultural impact, just not a good one. So it comes down to Shrek and Spider-Man. It comes down to the video game. I think Spider-Man 2's video game is still discussed highly, so I think I'm putting that number 1 as a result for cultural impact. Shrek goes number 2, Harry Potter 3, Troy 4, for not good reasons, and Day After Tomorrow number 5. Franchise. Harry Potter did well. Stepped down from previous entries, they made things darker. More entries, but it's Harry. It's always going to have sequels. Shrek, bigger than its predecessor, first of all. It introduced Puss in Boots. Piss in Boots. Hey, Piss in Boots. It introduces I said it again. Puss in Boots. My name is Puss in Boots. There we go. I need to say it like Antonio Banderas, because that's the only way I can say Puss in Boots. He would get his own spin-off and a TV series. I apologise to Antonio Banderas and anyone offended by that impression of Puss in Boots. We have let's see, Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man gets a sequel. Again, it gets rebooted, so again that kind of goes against it. Nothing for Day After Tomorrow. or Troy. So because of that, 4 and a 5, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, number 1 is going to Shrek because it did spawn 2 other sequels, a TV series, and a spin-off from a character directly from this film. Harry Potter had a load of sequels. He was always going to, but didn't drop the ball entirely. And of course, we eventually get a sequel to Spider-Man. So, the scores here are... Alright, so Shrek 2 is going ahead. Shrek 2 is in first place. Does that mean... That might mean we have 2 Shreks in the final. And it also means Spider-Man 2 is actually going to have to fight. Which is surprising. I love Spider-Man 2. Alright, so Shrek 2 is going to first. Spider-Man 2 is going to have to fight it out in second place. What a showdown it's been. And we've got to stop it there because there's just too many films to go through in one episode. We took out 25 of the 100 films today. And it's been full of heartbreaks, high points and low points. Who would have thought Pearl Harbor would have a chance at being the Summer Blockbuster Showdown champion? Who would have thought that Harry Potter 3 would be locked out, that it would remain the Prisoner of Azkaban, and who would have thought that Dinosaur would ever be brought up again? But here we are. This is full of surprises and upsets, and there's plenty more of that to come. 25 films we dealt with out of the 100. 15 have been sent packing. 5 are going straight to round 2 of the 32 films to be truly in contention for the Summer Blockbuster Showdown Championship. And second places are going to have to fight their way if they want a chance at that glory. So in first place, these are definitely going through Gladiator, Shrek, Spider-Man, Pirates of the Caribbean, Black Pearl, and Shrek 2. That's right, 2 Shreks are in the competition. Are they going to have to fight each other? That's a question that we're just going to have to find out as this competition goes on. I mean, those are some heavyweights right off the bat. Then in second place, these films are going to have to fight other second place finishes. Maybe each other, maybe other ones. We will have to see. Mission Impossible 2, Pearl Harbor, Attack of the Clones, Finding Nemo, Spider-Man 2. They're all going to have to fight if they want a chance at that gold crown. In fact, there's a chance that Spider-Man could face other Spider-Man. Attack of the Clones could possibly face another Star Wars film. And it's all going to come down to how these group stages go over the next couple of weeks. So come back to the next episode and we are going to go through 2005 to 2009. I still have my 2 saves, but I promise you by the end of next episode, I'll only have 1 left. What film am I going to save? What's going to go through? It's about to be an absolute bloodbath. But look, bloodbath, that's a bit jarring. We need something to calm us down, to cool us out and cool us off after a very intense showdown. So let's just unwind and have some useless IMDb trivia.
All trivia may be useless, but no trivia is more useless than useless IMDb trivia. That's a piece of trivia too.
That's right. Useless IMDb trivia. I don't know if this is very, very obvious or not, but I'm filming this like 18 hours after the regular podcast because halfway through filming last night, the power just went, which is awesome. I love when that happens. If you're on the YouTube channel, you're going to hear a story of what happened last time I lost power, which is I went to see Unhinged starring Russell Crowe. I've had to cut it from the podcast because it's too damn long. But yeah, was going to see Unhinged with Russell Crowe better than being in a house with no electricity? You be the judge. But if you ask me, no. No, it wasn't. We talk about a film called Dinosaur today. A film no one has talked about in years. I'm trying to make it famous again, bring it back. I've never seen it, never intend to see it. But it's a film we discussed, so because of that, it's viable for our useless IMDb trivia. So let's see. Let's find some real useless trivia on a film no one remembers. I mean, let's be honest. Useless IMDb trivia, I normally go to the very, very end because sometimes there's useful stuff on top. Dinosaur is such a forgotten, pointless film that no one remembers that all trivia about Dinosaur is useless, so I could really pick anything. Let's see. It's all just like, this person was considered, this person was considered. Who's adding? What poor individual is adding trivia to the Dinosaur trivia page? Oh, good lord. Okay, I'm trying to find one that no one likes. Okay, let's have a look here. No, that's not interesting. The highest grossing animated film, that's not interesting. And then we're just back to, oh my god, all of this trivia is useless. Christopher Walken was considered for the role of Bruton. That's great. It just says everyone considered. Was the casting director must never have worked again, and he was just like, I'm just going to go here and tell everyone. No rubber or prosthetics were used to make the dinosaurs. Yeah, it's a CGI film. Of course not. And 14 people found that useful. That's not how movies work. Am I missing something here? Oh my god. And then there's someone getting really shitty here, like, despite its budget, this movie was still a major box office success. Dinosaur Defenders 4 or 5 found that interesting. What a pointless film. What a useless bit of trivia. Everything to do with that was useless. As I mentioned, I could have picked anything. No one is going to be like, do you know what's going to happen? If you're like, hey, here's a bit of trivia on the film Dinosaur, they're not going to go, that's really interesting. They're going to go, what is Dinosaur? And then, like, by the time you explain it, they'll probably have, just blocked you on Facebook, because if you're really a passionate fan of Dinosaur, I'm guessing you don't have any friends and don't leave your house. I'm sorry if I offended anyone. I'm sorry I offended the one Dinosaur fan out there, but there you go. It's probably on Disney Plus now, so you can check it out. But, regardless, forget about checking that out. Thank you for checking this out, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube. As I said, it's now a video podcast on YouTube with a few enhanced video features. You can see my face full of sweat and poor lighting. Or is it? Or is that great lighting? I don't know. Who cares? Remember, regardless of how you check this out, thank you for doing so. Give it a positive thumbs up, subscribe, all that good shit. And remember, I can't spell cult without you. See you next time, where we do the Summer Blockbuster Showdown from 2005 to 2009 and DC Fandom.
This is a broadcast from the Pop Cult Pod.